help, but.
Testing, testing.
Austin P wants to host the commission at a football game this year. Did I
That'd
tell
be
you
great.
about that?
No, that'd be great. I'd love that.
November 3rd,
Yeah.
I'll email the commission. We'll buy the tickets at fair market value, but they're going to give us our own box.
I would love that. I think that'd be great.
Austin P Stadium is great. It's a. Wouldn't that be
Yeah,
fun?
that would be fun. Yeah.
I have a scholar in Austin.
Where's the coolest school one of your scholars is going to right now?
So I have Clemson, I have Stanford, I have
Mostly Southern.
yes.
Yeah.
10 to stay to the south. Wake Forest. Georgetown.
Oh, there you go.
That's cool.
Which was not particularly pleasing to Scott. He was a little too liberal for me.
He was offended by the notion.
I have to sometimes defend my choice of my decisions with kids on this like Scott, really. I'm going to find a non-liberal university.
Good luck, right?
Good luck.
All right. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here, and welcome to the summer quarterly meeting of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. At this point, I will ask Madam Secretary to please call the roll.
Evan Cope.
Present?
Nancy Dishner.
Present.
Secretary Hargett. Jimmy Johnston.
Here.
Pam Coben.
Here.
Treasurer Lillard.
Here.
Sarah Morrison. Mintha Roach. Vernon Stafford. Kara Soyak. Frank Watson. A.C. Wharton. Comptroller Wilson. DeKasha Winton.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have 8 present. We have quorum.
Very good. Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Okay, at this point, I'm happy to entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Is there a motion? Is there a second? Second? Okay, very good. All in favor signify so by saying aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries. The agenda is adopted. Okay, the next item on the agenda is my report, which I will give now. I want to thank Director Krause for his hard work in preparing the meeting and staff for all the hard work that goes into getting ready for these meetings. I know it consumes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and you all do excellent work, and it is very much appreciated. Today we're going to hear from Patty Miller. She's THEC's Architect and Chief of Facilities Planning, and she will review the changes and improvements made to the design and implementation of new facilities. Since starting at THEC 7 months ago, Patty has led the agency's effort in creating a standardized designer's manual, producing more consistent and efficient guidelines for campus project managers, designers, and contractors across the state. This purpose behind this is to ensure an effective design through construction capital process, which, as everyone here in this room probably realizes, is a very, very important part of what THEC does. Patty's also going to provide an update with respect to capital outlay project requests and that process. We're also going to hear from our fiscal policy team, who will review the 2018-19 proposed operating budgets. This also, in terms of reviewing the budgets, it's also a good time for all of us to kind of take stock of what the state's continued investment in higher education and the extent to which our state supports and funds higher education. Finally, we're going to hear from our local governed institution presidents, most of whom I think are here, and we're grateful for their presence and willingness to be here. Some of you will recall at the last meeting that we had, our leaders were asked to discuss and sort of explain the budgeting process at each institution and to help our commission understand the relationship between the budgeting at the local institutions and the request for fee increases and tuition increases. So we're going to hear from those folks today, and we appreciate, like I said, their being here. So that concludes my remarks, and at this point, I will call on Director Krause to provide his report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, and certainly want to recognize our presidents that are here today, as always, Dr. Glover, Chancellor Engel, Dr. Nolan, Dr. Oldham. I think I got most of our presidents that are here right now. We always appreciate your attendance during a busy time, especially in light of the discussions that will be held later today relative to tuition and fee setting. I will cede most of my time to Patty to walk through capital, but I first, as I thought about framing up my remarks today, I wanted to think through if you as commission members were stopped on the street and needed to give a 10-second, here's what's going on at THEC update. I just wanted to frame that out for you. A couple things. We know we're really good. It's nice when other people tell you your staff are good. And we've had a pretty impressive couple weeks in terms of national recognitions. The sales program, most of you are familiar with, a program we administer in partnership with the Tennessee Board of Regents, received the National Frank Newman Award from the Education Commission of the States. Troy Grant, stand up, we will embarrass you. I emailed you all when Troy received this award because it's a really big deal, but Troy was recognized as the College Access Professional of the Year nationally, and that is an incredible recognition we've never had at this agency, so we're very proud of him and his work. And then just 2 days ago, Dr. Emily House and I traveled to St. Louis to the Southern Legislative Conference, which is a group that many of our legislators are active in. We nominated the Tennessee Promise to compete as the Public Policy Program of the Year in the South. We competed against 38 other programs initially. That then was whittled down to 5 finalists. We presented Shark Tank style Tuesday morning and were then awarded the Star Award for the Best Public Policy Program in the South. The thing I would just say to the Commission, and many of you know this, Tennessee wasn't getting this recognition 10 years ago. This is a new era, really, I think, that recognizes the momentum that's going on, and certainly momentum we want to press forward during a time of transition that's coming in our state over the next few months. Touch briefly on Tennessee Reconnect. Jessica Gibson and the adult learner team have been working tirelessly over the last few months to really bring what was a concept. This time last year, we had a concept that adults in Tennessee could go to community college tuition free. That has now become a reality. We had hoped for 8,000 applicants. We have 25,000 applicants. And we really look forward to seeing this fall how that translates on campus. But many of you were able to even hear recently from Roane State Community College. It looks like it's going to have a dramatic effect on our enrollment of adults in Tennessee, which really defies the typical trajectory where when the economy's strong, adult enrollment drops. I think we're going to go the opposite direction. Last kind of menagerie of updates I would offer would just be, I think Lou Hanneman from our shop phrased it well the other day, which is THEC is continuing to evolve from a think agency. We'll always be a think agency, but we're really continuing to evolve into a do agency, into really tactical, on-the-ground initiatives that move the Drive to 55 forward. And a couple of points I want to make in that regard. First, the Lawrenceburg Higher Education Center is going to be the second of its kind in the state. The Kingsport area currently has a regional higher ed center that essentially is a food court model. And to our higher ed partners in the audience, I'll just tell you, If you're trying to bring forth capital projects that look really good, one of them is multi-use facilities. And MTSU saw that last year with a multi-use academic building that crosses disciplines. The Lawrenceburg Higher Ed Center will cross campuses, and indeed will have Tennessee Tech, MTSU, Columbia State Community College, and Martin Methodist all housed in one location. THEC's role in that is we are the air traffic controller, and Lou is leading the work there, but we're essentially trying to make sure the right programs are being offered. I really think that this is a chance to test something that we should look at doing in a couple other pockets statewide. If you go to any county in the state, they will tell you, I want a TCAT. I understand that. We think that these facilities actually might be the better approach. Second, HBCU initiative, Brittany Mosby is here. Brittany is now in her 6th month of work with THEC. We are the only SHIO agency in America with a focused effort to support our HBCUs. We will continue moving forward, but right now kind of the exciting news we have is we have committed internal THEC funding to ensure that every HBCU in the state is able to offer bridge programs for their incoming students next summer. TSU's, thank you, Dr. Glover, very much. That's right. TSU's already doing that, as is Lane College. We have 4 other HBCU partners, though, that we will fund that effort, and we will fund TSU's effort next year to help them backfill some of that funding. It is a silver bullet-like strategy with at-risk students to bring them onto campus and help them get integrated early, so we're really excited about that. Finally, as many of you saw, the University of Tennessee Board of Trustees was wholly reconstituted, and next week, Dr. Lauren Collier, in partnership, of course, with the University of Tennessee, we will orient that new board in accordance with the statute. THEC is required to deliver professional development to every new board. We did that with the LGI boards about 15 months ago, and we'll be doing that with the University of Tennessee next week, so certainly look forward to it. Capital projects, if you think of the core of what we do at THEC, it's really 3 things. It's approve academic programs, tuition and fees, and capital projects. Capital projects in higher education, I think, are undergoing a radical evolution right now. First, we have 6 LGIs that now, for the most part, have complete independence over how they handle their capital projects. Second, we have an evolution about how the state views many facets of capital projects. All of those functions were really calling on a central point of contact to standardize certain capital approaches. Other capital approaches we think absolutely need to remain at the campus level. For the first time ever, THEC has hired a full-time architect, Patty Miller, who's on our staff. She has been with us how long now, Patty? 6 months. It feels like longer because, certainly to her, because the reality is everything Patty is doing is the first time it's ever been done. Her update is going to be in the weeds, I'm warning you, but I think that's necessary because in November, when we bring you the capital priority list, we really want the commissioners to understand the foundation that's there. 2 things. First, the designer's manual that Chairman Cope mentioned, that's a really important task. We have had a couple different ways to do designer manuals in Tennessee over the last few years. That makes the State Building Commission's job harder. We'll now have a standardized designer manual that Patty helped develop in concert with the campuses. The second piece is, in the past, capital project lists that we brought you in November were often a matter of attrition. So projects that managed to survive on a list continued to survive, and eventually they moved their way up. Last year, we went to the first ever merit-based restart evaluation every year. And this year, we have another slate of projects currently being evaluated by a blind reading committee that also includes architects. We think that this process is working. We want you to understand it, though, certainly. And one of the things I would say is the number one weighted metric on that rubric that Patty will share with you is how does this building align with the Drive to 55? How does this building move forward the state's higher education mission? The campuses have done an incredible job of kind of rising to that question. And the reality is most of the capital projects we receive, we're selecting from 10 excellent projects or 20 excellent projects, which makes the task hard. But it also makes having the expertise of someone like Patty essential. So I will ask Patty to join me up here. She will walk you through kind of what the evolution of capital project management has been over the last several months.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, Chairman Cope, members of the Commission. Over the past 6 months, we focused on 3 primary areas related to capital projects. The first is the capital budget, as Mike has mentioned. This is the second year that all 6 universities and the TBR and UT systems have submitted proposed capital projects to THEC. THEC refined the submittal requirements from last year for the purpose of condensing the information and having consistency in the proposed formats. The requirements continue to emphasize the Drive to 55 goals, the connection between the university's strategic plan and master plan, the specific details with regard to the students and programs served, the space needs of the campus, the program scope, and cost. All of the proposed submittals for the fiscal year 1920 were received prior to the deadline of July 16th. We're reviewing them now in preparation of preparing a prioritized list for consideration by the Commission at the November meeting. And Mike mentioned some of the details of the rubric that was created that's been fine-tuned from last year. The rubric includes state goals and Drive to 55 is a quarter of all of the points. The strategic plan and campus master plan is a quarter of all the points. So literally half of the grading, a very specific grading system, is related to the state goals and how the universities themselves have prepared their master plans. The balance of the points are related to space needs on the campus and also the details with regard to how they have defined their project, how much pre-planning they have done, do they understand the project, what are the cost and scope and the specifics of what is being proposed on the project. The second focus area has been the severance process of 5 universities in the area of capital project management and their independent management of those projects. They're now approved, of course, by THEC. The SBC policy has been revised accordingly, and they are moving forward with all of their projects. Prior to the review and approvals of their severance by THEC, they participated, all of the facility staff participated in very intensive training, over 60 hours of training since last November. This included the subjects of the State Building Commission policy, the Office of State Architect Policy and Procedures, real estate transactions, master planning, design and construction processes, State of Tennessee Edison training and payments and processing of the fiscal part of running a project, and also project information tracking. The training was conducted by TBR former and current staff, the State Architect's Office, and FNA, and we believe this training has been a vital part of this transition process for all of the campuses. We will continue the training and roundtables over the coming year with a focus on State Building Commission policy and project follow-ups as they all get started. The 5 universities are now bringing projects forward to the State Building Commission directly, and they're beginning to manage their own new projects. At the same time, TBR Facilities Development will continue to manage their existing projects. This means all the projects that were approved prior to June of this year by the Building Commission. So TBR is continuing with the management of those projects. The third focus area involves what we would call shared resources. And Mike touched on this with the designer's manual. These are the functions of the project management that can be shared between all of the institutions. All universities, TBR and UT, will benefit from having a standardized process, design and construction process. And to support that goal, we've started to update a document called the AIA A201, General Conditions of the Contract, and we have completed a standardized designer's manual. We're working with a team of architects, including Jerry Preston and Carl Manka, formerly of TBR Facilities Development, with Tim McKeon, who previously worked at UT, Keith King from TBR, and Michelle Crowder from UT, and the State Architect's Office to produce the designer's manual and AIA A201. In the past, both UT and TBR have had their own versions of the A201, and we're now merging them into a single revised and updated version. This is the key portion of the family of design and construction documents that serve as the primary contractual guide that defines the responsibilities of the owner, designer, and contractor. A standardized AIA A201 is critical to having a consistency in project requirements and the assignment of responsibilities to the various parties. We expect it will be completed and ready for use by October, and we believe this will be a great benefit not only to the universities but also to designers and contractors across the state who will not have to review and understand different contracts and so on across the state. And these are the designers and contractors who would be doing work across multiple campuses. The designer's manual is literally a book that includes standardized instructions, specifications, and standardized forms. We pulled from the standard documents that were in use by TBR and UT and produced a single reference guide. All higher ed institutions can use the manual, and it's formatted so they can include campus-specific instructions and campus guidelines unique to their campus. Having just one consistent manual statewide eliminates the need for any designer or contractor to have to be familiar with multiple sets of manuals. Having one manual will also provide the opportunity and advantage for all campuses to work together for improved knowledge base among all facilities planning staff, and will be a more effective and efficient way to maintain these documents. So this is, as you can hear, is a very deep in the weeds kind of description of the kind of things that are going on, but it truly represents the way that the campuses and THEC can work together to produce the best projects. So in conclusion, I would say these past few months mark the start of the Focus Act being in full effect in the area of capital projects. And then as we move forward over this next transition year, we'll plan to continue to establish the resources that can be shared, continue with the project management training, and begin to focus on long-range facilities planning. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Are there any questions from the Commission on capital generally? The last point that Patty mentioned is essential, long-range facilities planning. Almost every campus is master planned. They know exactly where their capital projects need to go. Beginning to build that into our long-range plan, we think, is probably the next really important step. And then in that way, we can bring to you essentially a forecast of what the next several years of capital look like.
Great, thank you.
Concludes my report.
Thanks very much, Director Krause. Okay, I neglected to draw everyone's attention and address the approval of the minutes from the May 17th meeting. So at this point in time, I'm happy to entertain a motion to approve the minutes that have been presented to you for approval. So moved. A motion, do we have a second? Second. A second. All in favor signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. All right. For those of you familiar with our typical agenda, next typically comes the systems reports, but as you know, item 5 on the agenda, we're going to hear from the systems, and so for the sake of time, we will merge that item into item number 5, which is the reports from the actual systems and the LGIs. So we will move on to agenda item number 1, which is post-secondary education authorization. Dr. Stephanie Beller-Chase.
Thank you, Chairman Cope, Director Krause, members of the Commission. Good morning. I have 2 action items for your consideration today. The first action item has 4 components to it, and the second action item is just by itself. The Committee on Post-Secondary Educational Institutions has recommended that the institutions listed in Section 1A receive reauthorization as listed for the period of September 1, 2018 through August 31, 2019. There are 2 institutions that are listed for conditional authorization, and the reasons for the condition are listed in your materials. The next action item is the authorization of the new institutions in Section 1B and the approval of the new programs in Section 1C. And lastly, the committee has recommended that the institutions listed in Section 1D be granted optional expedited authorization. That's
Okay.
the first action item.
Thank you very much. So unless there's an objection from any commissioner, we're going to consider items A, B, C, and D in one motion, which I will entertain now. All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. And for my last action item, in Section 1E, the commission staff is recommending that we have a new appointment to the committee, Mr. Ron Gilham, and that we reappoint 3 committee members, Mr. Bill Fair, Mr. John Keys, and Dr. Kitty Myatt. All of these individuals will serve a 3-year term from July 1st, 2018 to June 30, 2021.
Very good. Okay, the floor is open for a motion.
Move approval.
The motion to approve, is there a second? There's a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, next, item 2 on the agenda, policy updates, and I will call on Shauna Jennings.
Thank you, Chairman Cope, Commission members, Executive Director Kraus. As you know, the Higher Education Commission maintains an official policy manual, which includes an overview of the agency and rules of procedure to carry out the purposes for which it was created. Recent legislation and changes to practice have necessitated revisions to 2 sections of the manual. The first proposed revision is to the overview. It would update the description of the composition of the commission, reducing the number of student members from 2 to 1, which is consistent with changes to TCA 497204 enacted by 2018 Public Chapter 602. The second proposed revision would update Section 4 members, which would update the description of the selection, appointment, and term of service of student members consistent with the same public chapter. Finally, there's a proposed revision to Section 5, officers, which removes the limitation on the number of successive terms that a member may serve as chairman of the commission. Staff is recommending that the commission adopt these proposed revisions to the policy manual.
Thank you, Ms. Jennings. Any questions for Ms. Jennings? Okay, the floor is open for a motion. So motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Is there any discussion?
Thank you. I would like to recommend that we take a look at this section of our policies for the November meeting to include the changes that will take place in the executive director's appointment and to whom he does report. I think we haven't changed that here, and that will take effect in January.
I think that's a great point. Counsel, did you want to?
Thank you, Commissioner Copeland. Those changes in the statutory shift in the appointment authority of the executive director take effect January 1, 2019. We've already prepared that language for adoption by the commission at that appropriate time.
Okay. Thanks very much. Okay, there's a motion on the floor. There is a second. Thank you, Commissioner Coben, for your comments. Any further discussion or other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks very much, Ms. Jennings. Okay, next, item number 3, new academic programs. Betty Dandridge Johnson.
Yes. Good morning, Chairman Cope, members of the Commission, and Director Kraus. Presented in your meeting materials are requests for 4 new academic program proposals. There is one for a Bachelor of Applied Science in Mechatronics Engineering Technology at UT Chattanooga, and 3 new programs at the University of Memphis, and they include the Commercial Aviation Bachelor of Science, as well as a Master of Science in Biostatistics and a Doctor of Liberal Studies. All 4 proposals have undergone the scrutiny required under the THEC policy on new academic programs and have fulfilled all of the required steps as it relates to developing a new academic program. UTC's Mechatronics Engineering Technology program will be presented by Chancellor Steve Engel, as well as Dr. Daniel Pack, who is the Dean of the College of Engineering and Computer Science. And the 3 new programs for the University of Memphis will be presented by the Provost, Dr. Karen Willow-West. All programs have been evaluated by external reviewers, along with responding to all issues, and I have to stress that, all issues identified by these reviewers, as well as THEC staff. Both institutional governing boards have approved these programs and are being presented today for commission approval. I now call on Chancellor Engel.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for this time that I could present the program at UTC. I would like to thank the chairman, the director, and the members of the commission. The the mechatronics is a relatively new field of area where it's combining the principles and technologies from multiple areas of disciplines, including electrical engineering, computer engineering, systems engineering, and electronics engineering. So by combining these principles and technologies from these areas, primarily in manufacturing sector, that they were able to increase the quality of the products in manufacturing industry. So we think this is a very timely program that we can offer in the southeast of the Tennessee. A good example of this mechatronics product would be a robot where you would combine the mechanical moving parts with the electrical or electronics part, which actually moves and controls the movement of the mechanism. The word mechatronics comes from two words. It derived from two words. One is mechanical, by combining the first part of mechanical and the last part of electronics together. The word mechatronics have come through. So mechatronics is playing an increasingly important role in a number of industries, including manufacturing. Any industry that has to do with assembling parts and robots, of course, and even biomedical engineering, the mechatronics is a must or a very important part of improving their operation. People with the mechatronics experience is highly needed and demanded in the sectors that I've mentioned here. Given the importance of the field of the study and for the economic development of the future of the state and the nation, the proposed program provides a clear pathway for students with AAS degree to earn a 4-year technology degree program in BAS. No such program exists in southeast region of Tennessee, and we believe that 2+2 program that we are working with the community colleges is a very unique feature of the proposed program and will foster continued collaboration between institutions. In terms of the alignment with the master plan of the state of Tennessee, as well as the mission of the university, at least 3 areas of goals of the master plan of THEC aligns with this particular program. First, that by creating this clear pathway for the students that I have already mentioned, that it increases the educational attainment of the group of citizens in Tennessee. The second, the degree program will contribute towards state's economic development, in particular in the growing sectors of the manufacturing as well as automation. And third, and finally, it contributes to THEC's vision of the statewide efficiencies through institutional collaboration and minimization of the redundancy. As I mentioned, that there are 2 community colleges that we work very closely to provide this 2+2 BAS program. And again, there's no other BAS program in mechatronics engineering technology that exists in the state of Tennessee. As for the mission, UTC mission and its alignment, the program will enrich and sustain the Chattanooga community through partnership with industry in developing new technologies and advancing technologies in mechatronics. The enrichment and sustainment of the community is also achieved by the program by producing responsible technologists who will participate in manufacturing and automation industry in Chattanooga area. As for our needs and the demands for the program, I would like to refer to Times Free Press, who recently published that Chattanooga is one of the 5 best cities in the United States for growing manufacturing businesses. Chattanooga Chamber of Commerce lists over 54 manufacturing companies in the region, and this number does not include companies working in additive manufacturing, automation, or robotics. A survey of a dozen local companies have also confirmed the need of 25 to 30 graduates from this program annually. As for the number of students who are desiring for this program, the two community colleges that I mentioned, Chattanooga State and Cleveland State, reports that the recent number of over 350 versus 180 students enrolled in their technology program, AAS technology program, of which from the Chat State, 30% of students express strong desire in pursuing four-year technology degree in mechatronics. In the nation, according to study portals, there are 16 different bachelor's degree programs that deal with mechatronics in the United States. Of these, 4 of them are Bachelor of Science in Mechatronics Engineering, which includes the one offered by Middle Tennessee State University. There are 7 other programs of mechatronics, which is a part of the concentration of either engineering or technology program. And there are only 5 other mechatronics engineering technology program in the nation, 3 of which are offered by Purdue in 3 of its campuses, one in Central State Connecticut University and another at Utah State. No similar program exists in Tennessee or southeast region of the nation. This slide shows the number of projected enrollment in the program for the next 5 years, including the graduates starting the 3rd year. And on my final slide shows the revenues and expenses that will occur for, again, next 5 years of this program. This slide shows, the figure shows that the program is not only sustainable, but also be able to afford to cover the cost of the facility, maintenance, and any type of administrative overhead expenses with this revenue that it generates. So that's the end of the presentation that I have, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that members might have regarding this program. Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Coben.
Thank you. I appreciate you recognizing me. I was concerned about the graduation rates. They look like they're running projected to be about 50% in this program.
So,
of
course, the number is a projection, and we got that number by our rate of how our transfer students perform in our program university-wide. It's about 50% that they will graduate within 2 years. And that's 2 years figure that you're seeing. Of course, if you go to 3rd year and 4th year, the number will get better. A lot of these students, as you know, as you might know, that the AAS is a terminal degree where students would go out and start working. So you will also see a lot of students who will be working on their degree program, not necessarily as a full-time, but part-time.
Further questions? Commissioner Watson? I'm sorry, Commissioner Johnson? Commissioner Watson? Oh, sure, thank you.
So what happens to the $600,000 you make on the program?
So, a great question. The $600,000 overall, that's, first of all, it's for 5 years. So that's a little over $100,000 per year. And there is about $100 per credit hours that students would take that will go to overhead expense. By overhead, what I mean by that is the students who would use library, who would use the recreational center. There has to be a overhead for turning the light on in the building, as well as cleaning and maintaining the building, and the program would be all included in that cost, which turned out to be about $100 per credit hours, and that number matches with that figure.
Yes, ma'am, Commissioner Coben.
Sir, you know what, I would suggest that you include that in your cost figure, because it's all part of the cost of the program, and I think it would look a lot better if you presented it that way.
If I may, Commissioner Coben, THEC staff strongly encouraged all campuses to do that in their presentations today, having seen the commission's questions last time. And I would just beseech the questions, when the commission staff ask you to include that, when Betty says to include it, we do that because it tells a story, to Commissioner Coben and Commissioner Watson's point. So as we try to work through and explain things like cross subsidies, putting it on the slide matters. So please, just our campus partners moving forward, it's really important to do that.
Other questions, further discussion? Commissioner Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, back to pathways. A TCAT student that shows up with the diploma and their version of mechatronics/industrial maintenance, can they come to UTC and earn their associate degree on their way to the bachelor's?
So the students can certainly come to UTC to get their AAS degree when they need to go back to whichever the community colleges after they fulfill their requirements with taking courses at UTC. That's certainly possible. We're encouraging this program to be strictly 2+2 program, where they would finish their AAS degree program in their community colleges before they come to UTC.
So you're saying they'd have to go from the TCAT to the community college to UTC?
So that's correct for now. Yeah.
Other questions, comments? Yes, sir. Secretary Hargett.
This may seem like a silly question, but you're going to know far more about this than I do. What jobs are we trying to help people fill that the AAS does not prepare them for that this will?
That's a great question. So a lot of these industries, manufacturing industries, they require three types of people to work for them. One is technicians, and these are the people who would operate and make sure that machines are running day to day. You would require engineers, who would be responsible for developing, designing, and creating the systems and machines for the particular factory or for a particular industry. There's, in between these two, the need for what we call technologists. And technologists have the experience and knowledge beyond the technician's level, but does not have to acquire the same level of expertise as engineers do. Technologists would be responsible to make sure not only maintaining the operation of the machines and factories, but they would participate in governing the entire system and the entire operation of assembly. So that is the focus of this program, of creating technologists who would fall in between those two.
Okay, so what job, based on what you said, it sounds to me like the TCAT would prepare somebody to be a technician.
Correct.
Okay, the AAS prepares somebody to?
AAS would be technicians as well.
Why does somebody go to TCAT and not just go straight and go to the AAS program then?
So I've mentioned about 30% of the AAS program students would be pursuing four-year degree technology program. The other 70% of students, they're going into AAS program as their terminal degree. So this program will be catering to those students who have gone into AAS program but realize that four-year degree program as a technologist would be more and better for their career rather than being a technician. That would what this program would be for.
All right, thank you. If I can ask a question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Krause, is there, whenever in my department, whenever we're talking about our expenses and we look at payroll, we know there's a multiplier that we use. It's not just for the payroll. We have to assume benefits, that it's not just what we're paying that person, we have to pay the tax, et cetera. Is there a commonly accepted multiplier for what the overhead component of a program a new program would be, or even if we can figure out, based on how much somebody is paying per credit hour, what percentage of that is typically attributed to overhead?
Mr. Secretary, there's absolutely a commonly accepted multiplier for faculty salaries and benefits, which is what we typically use to build the model. What's unique among programs, and I think this was touched on a bit, is equipment costs, which are unique. I'm intrigued by your last point, though. And Betty, we will work on that. That would represent a new approach towards thinking about program costs. Typically, because of the diverse array of programs, everyone comes with slightly different costs. But if some foundational reference point would be helpful, I think we absolutely could look at that.
All right, thank you.
Great questions, great comments. Other questions and comments? Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. I do want to recognize Chancellor Engel. Thank you for being here. And is there anything you'd like to say or add to?
No, I appreciate the program. I think it's a great partnership with our community colleges, and will benefit the region.
Thanks. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you. I'll move approval, Chairman. Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Betty, I think we've got another item.
Good morning.
Morning.
Chairman Koch, Director Krause, and members of the Commission, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present for your approval 3 new academic programs. At the undergraduate level, the focus is on servicing a need and facilitating the drive to 55. At the graduate level, a master's and a doctoral program focus on the University of Memphis's movement and the President Rudd's direction of becoming a Research One institution as classified by the Carnegie Foundation, bringing more opportunities for funding for research opportunities and enrollment at the graduate level. All are directed to advance our mission of inclusive excellence. Our first program for your consideration is a Bachelor of Science in Commercial Aviation. Some of the unique program features of the Bachelor of Science in Commercial Aviation. Am I clicking? Okay, got it. Thank you. Include an endorsement and a strong letter of support from Fred Smith, CEO of FedEx Corporation, who summarizes that piloting, not only being a national shortage of pilots across the country, but piloting today is evolving to include the piloting of drones and other robots, which require aviators to be more advanced in their knowledge, more savvy in their thinking regarding technology, and more creative and prepared academically. This evolving technology also requires a broader knowledge base. Part of what we offer through the University of Memphis are opportunities to reduce the number of courses and cost associated with the achievement of a bachelor's degree, because we have in place ways to recognize prior learning experience and translate those experiences into credit-bearing hours that we use extensively in the University College, and experiential learning credit, all reduce cost and student debt. The U.S. and the Bachelor's of Science in Commercial Aviation will also enhance career options in West Tennessee and across the globe. We currently have an existing memorandum of understanding with the Crew Training International. It's an FAA-approved flight training credential and facility that's located primarily off in Millington, right near us, a part of our University of Memphis campus, and many of the classes will occur there. What's unique about our program is this is an interdisciplinary program. There will be courses in business law, in organizational leadership, in aviation law that are part of this program. It's also resulting in a capstone course where those students who complete that capstone course will be certified to become flight instructors. The alignment of this program with the state master plan and the institutional mission is that this program provides more opportunities, particularly for historically underrepresented minority populations and post-traditional age students. The University College is recognized as 50th in the country by U.S. News and World Report for being the program in college that serves the highest number and graduates the highest number of adult students. Many students will also be military personnel or veterans in the area who need a program like this. It fills the void of no existing college-based flight training programs to serve veterans of the NSA Mid-South Navy Base and 164th Air National Guard Base located in Memphis, and a significant opportunity to collaborate with the Air Force ROTC program. We currently have existing partnerships, obviously, with FedEx. We have the FedEx Institute of Technology right on our campus, which already has interdisciplinary collaborative research groups for which these students will become a part of. They will be involved in the Institute of Intelligent Systems, and then they will have opportunities for internships, scholarship opportunities, tuition readmission opportunities from FedEx especially. So we're pleased already to incorporate these students into those existing kinds of research-based opportunities. It addresses a local and national need. Nationally, there is a pilot shortage. Some estimates predict as high as 15,000 pilots needed by 2026. The July 2017 CNN Money article reported 41,000 new passenger and cargo airlines are purchased around the world in the 2 decades, and they will need 637 new pilots to fly them. More than 42% of active pilots at the biggest carriers will also retire in the next 10 years. This could lead to a grounding of a large number of aircraft if we do not move to help fill this need. Our wonderful external reviewer, Dr. James Higgins from the University of North Dakota, a program in aviation that already enrolls 1,600 students, stated that this program is distinctive for 2 reasons. Memphis is a large urban city. It is uniquely situated to diversify the field of commercial aviation. Secondly, the presence of FedEx Corporation and its large footprint in the global world aviation industry will help this become a destination program for those seeking the best level of expertise in aviation science and commercial aviation, specialized growth for aviation and aeronautic science. Our enrollment and projections, our wonderful external reviewer has told us that they are conservative. This was submitted at the time before we had that expert review, and we will expect higher numbers than what you have before you. Nationwide, collegiate aviation programs have experienced rapid growth over the last 3 years and have increased by more than 100%. The external reviewer pointed to that, and he also pointed to the fact that we've outlined in the proposal that we currently have a pipeline. East High School, formerly Wooddale, is a STEM transportation STEM school now, and it already has an aviation program working very closely with many of our faculty currently involved with the University of Memphis. Those students coming from both the traditional age schools as well as those coming from programs and corporations like FedEx would be interested in this program. The tuition will cover the cost of this program from the beginning. As we talked about, this is a unique opportunity for veterans through their post-911 benefit packets, but in order to be eligible for these packages, the program must be affiliated with a university. So a flight training program would be insufficient for the use of these benefits without a BS accompanying it. There are many veterans in Memphis who need a local university so they won't have to leave. You see our tuition and fees that we will collect from these programs based on those conservative estimates. In addition, we will collect the flight fees, but they go directly to crew international training, which is why you see the negative there. We will also have program costs associated with rolling out this program of $25,000 at the bottom of each, and we will reallocate any leftover to help grow the program, $47,000 predicted in the first year and thereabout. So it's a program that's sustainable, needed, focusing on inclusive excellence of the discipline, supported by the major players in the field of aviation, the Organization of Black Aerospace Engineers and Pilots, and certainly needed in our community. The second program presented for your consideration It's a,
Let me
Okay,
just interrupt
sorry.
you there. I'm so sorry, Dr. Whittle West. I think probably because we have three, it'd be better to do them one at a time.
Okay, thank you.
If that's okay with you.
Yes.
All right, very good presentation. Thank you so much. Questions or comments at this point? Yes, sir. Commissioner Watson.
I think this is a program, it's a classic example of how business or industry and higher education can collaborate to produce the kind of students that we want to produce that will have jobs in our community. And I can tell you, my friends at Federal Express are really excited about the partnership. And obviously, they're a real fan of the University of Memphis. So
Thank you so much.
very much.
Thank you so much. We agree, Commissioner, and we really, really do want to provide this need for those students who are in urban areas, often representing some of the poorest across the country, and with our Pell Grant eligibility associated with the bachelor's program and these other ways we have of reducing the cost, we can make this available to a broad spectrum of underrepresented populations.
Great comment.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a follow-up question to that one. So do you know whether or not FedEx or any of the other organizations, the private sector organizations, are going to offer any types of internships or externship programs and what those will look like?
Yes, we've already discussed with FedEx Corporation, which is wonderfully a part of our board and affiliated with several other partnerships that we have on campus. For example, we just launched in our FedEx Institute an opportunity for students enrolled at the University of Memphis to be employed as part of the call center that FedEx uses to make sure that all services are being met. We have found that, and national data continue to show, that when students are employed on campus, then that increases retention and graduation rates significantly. FedEx led that institution and that opportunity for us. Our students make $15 to $16 an hour in that call center. They have helped to support that. And it obviously has led to, according to Alan Graff and others highly affiliated with FedEx, some of the best call facilities that they have, outpacing many of those for which the professionals are paid much higher salaries. So yes, those kinds of internship opportunities associated with this program have already been discussed and are ready to be rolled out.
Thank you, Commissioner Dishner.
Just a curiosity question. Are there admissions requirements into this major field of study beyond the traditional admissions requirements?
No admissions required beyond the major requirements for everyone else.
Other comments or questions? I would just like to, I want to echo Commissioner Watson's comments. This is really the sort of program, at least I speak for myself, when you see the partnership between the private sector and the university and the lengths to which you've both gone to ensure that people who participate in this program have jobs on the other side of the program. And I'm really impressed with it. And I just want to commend you both for that.
Thank you so much, Chairman Cope.
Any other comments? Yes, sir. Secretary Hargis.
So I was kind of surprised by the answer to Dr. Dishner's question. I just want to make sure, because you're telling me someone who's has no flight experience or anything can come in and get this 4-year degree. No other requirements.
Some will come in with flight experience, and they won't have to take the same number. That's correct. Okay. They won't take the same number of flight courses that have already been laid out by the crew international flight training program.
All right, just want to clarify.
That's correct.
That's not my expectation.
That's correct.
So, to this point, just a pilot's license to solo is extremely expensive. And you're talking about a program that will really be serving underserved students in many ways.
Many.
So how will that be accommodated in this process?
Right. So because of the affiliation with a Bachelor's of Science degree, for which students could not obviously typically get Pell eligibility for. So the Pell Grant will help, student loans will help, opportunities for internships, tuition reimbursement programs for those already employed with some of these agencies are all designed, and prior learning assessment are all designed to help lower the cost. Flight training is expensive, more expensive than other kinds of preparation, but these are ways to mitigate some of those costs.
Well, my cautionary note is to really pay particular attention that this doesn't become an elitist program, that only those
Absolutely.
who can afford to.
Absolutely.
Great point.
Absolutely. Very good point.
Great comments, great questions. Other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, the floor is open. Move to approve and a second. Treasurer Lillard, you had the motion. Secretary Hargett with the second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you so much for your approval, Commission. The second program for your consideration is a Master of Science in Biostatistics. Some of the unique program features of this program and Masters of Science in Biostatistics is that it provides the requisite advanced knowledge and biostatistical methods. We've all heard about big data analyses and the need for big data in all areas. It's particularly needed in the health-related fields, in hospitals, healthcare institutions, clinics, public health organizations using statistical computing packages, which we will train and prepare students with, such as SAS, Statistical Analytic System, SPSS for social sciences, and R, which is a language and a free and open source of statistics available to all that provide some graphical techniques associated with statistics, linear and nonlinear training and preparation. It also provides opportunities for students to participate in already existing research teams that are available in the School of Public Health to conduct independent data analysis on projects that require statistical analyses. The curriculum core includes courses in applied biostatistics, epidemiology, bioinformatics, and public health. We currently operate a concentration in the Masters of Public Health and Biostatistics, and that concentration is one of our highest enrolled. The needs there are greatest. And you might be asking, what does a biostatistician do? And why is this person needed? Well, that's a good question if you didn't ask it. But a biostatistician helps us answer big data questions like, when we look at the opioid epidemic across the country now, what set of protocols for which populations of clients seem to work best based on some genotypes or some previous experiences and exposures, and how do we also provide the current wraparound services that would be needed to provide that continued care? That requires statistical analyses, predictive analytics that biostatisticians are prepared to conduct, that they are not prepared to conduct in some of the other areas. What's the alignment then with the state master plan and institutional mission? This does meet the workforce demand. Labana needs our major healthcare facilities across the state, and especially in Memphis. They need big data analytics to help us make better dents in our healthcare disparities, which are skyrocketing despite our continued efforts to reduce them. It increases educational attainment levels of Tennesseans. It addresses the state's economic development plan. People who hold MS degrees in biostatistics start at salaries of $80,000. The mean salary is $113,000. It's a unique degree, not offered in Tennessee University, so there's no redundancy. What's the need and demand? The Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts growth of about 14% in 2020. In 2012, 25,000 biostatisticians in the U.S., 3,500 new jobs predicted by 2020. Survey results from institutes focused on public health, such as Methodist Labana Healthcare, Baptist Hospital for Cancer, St. Jude's Research Institute, QSource, and other major pharmaceuticals said we need biostatisticians. Fortune magazine ranked this also one of the best graduate degrees in terms of people who hold these jobs for their job satisfaction, their salary, their marketability, their competitive edge, and career opportunities. Our enrollment projections are, again, conservative. We believe that we can get more than this. The data to support the student demand, interest, and projections are presented there for your review. You can see in Tennessee the employment rate of those holding the degree in biostatistics and how it's rapidly increasing. The overall cost for this program, we have faculty who hold PhDs in various areas related to this. We have interdisciplinary teams in mathematics who already work with those in computer science, who already work with those in public health, who are prepared to provide the level of training for this program. So no new state funds are required. No new faculty are required. One may be hired to coordinate at a later date. The program is built upon existing resources, and revenue growth is anticipated as the program increases. With that being the final slide associated with that degree, I'm open and willing to accept your questions about that.
Questions or comments? Okay, the floor is open. Motion to approve. Treasurer Lillard with the motion, Secretary Hargett with the second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you so much for your approval. The third program for your consideration is our Doctoral of Liberal Studies. Did I go back? Okay. So, as the president has mentioned, and I've mentioned here as a goal of the University of Memphis, we are working feverishly to reach Carnegie classification of Research 1 institution. A Research 1 institution garners the greatest amount of funding from the National Science Foundations, all of the national agencies, and with that funding, we're able to support more graduate students so that there is full pay, or what one might call full rides, for students to be able to earn these degrees while contributing to research in the field that betters the state, the city, and of course, across the globe. In this way, we also need tuition-paying doctoral students for their own advancement in professional degrees. The Doctoral of Liberal Studies provides degrees for part-time students primarily. It's a unique program. There are only 2 other Doctoral of Liberal Studies students in the country. It's Georgetown, Southern Methodist University. We would be in good company. They have had wonderful and successful experiences because of the flexibility, the ability for a student to essentially custom design an advanced area of study that meets his or her needs, with some overarching foundation courses and some culminating dissertation experiences. It's a multimodal delivery of courses, so those who cannot take off and go to a doctoral program on a full-time basis can go part-time. They can do hybrid. Online, there will be many term offerings associated with this. The University College has operated Bachelors of Professional Studies, Bachelors of Liberal Arts Studies, has an existing Masters of Liberal Arts Studies that many are offered completely online that service all these needs of all of these post-traditional age students. So again, much experience in this area, and it's from those students who have graduated who have called most for this degree. As they've gone into career fields, they can advance themselves, and they don't need the full-time 54-hour doctoral study to do so. U.S. News and World Report again ranked the University College 40th in the country for adult learners. What's the alignment with the state master plan? With our Carnegie classification goal, I mentioned that doctoral degree production is the most significant criterion used to classify institutions as Research 1. There's a growing demand for jobs and workers in Tennessee outpacing employees with doctoral skills. In fact, our Tennessee Council of Graduate Schools, a group within which most of us have been involved and continue to respect, cites that Tennessee needs more students who hold doctoral degrees. Depending on any kind of ranking, you might see that we are 46th in the country or 47th in the number of those who hold a doctoral degree. And yet doctoral prepared workers earn about $2 million more over their lifetime than those who hold a bachelor's degree. When we conducted our feasibility study with the Educational Advisory Board, they presented numbers that you see here. The top employers of doctoral level liberal studies graduates are pharmaceutical companies, are educational companies, are major clinical diagnostic companies, Price Waterhouse. This is a degree that, depending on what your master's and undergraduate were in, you're simply allowing yourself the opportunity to learn more about it, to strive higher, and develop greater leadership skills. It is interdisciplinary in nature. We also see that when we look at some of the overall cost associated with that program and the revenue, these are students who will be attending, again, primarily paid either by employers to help them gain the leadership that they need, or certainly paid by their own career earnings, because it will be targeting those populations. As such, we've seen robust enrollment in these kinds of programs that certainly take care of the opportunities and needs to provide the teaching and tutelage of and support for the research. We can see there that the University College, like many of these programs, with it being a custom-designed interdisciplinary program, draws on faculty in English, in communications, in business, who actually don't have to be paid through the University College. So it does produce the revenue that's designed to help the entire university in terms of enrollment and graduation from this particular program. I think I missed one more I wanted to highlight. And still, we certainly see, I hope you can see in your report, that we expect, again, robust enrollment, about 60 over the time in which we've reached the point in which THEC will be reviewing us. Okay. Having said that, are there any other questions?
Questions? Yes,
Yes.
ma'am, Commissioner Coben.
Dr. Whittlewest, you had a slide that showed the kinds of professions these students, these graduates would go into.
Right.
And I'm just thinking, Price Waterhouse, I'm very surprised they'd want a doctorate in liberal arts. I can see them wanting an accountant. You know,
And just, such a good question,
well,
Commissioner Coben.
Could
Yes.
you just walk me through that
Yes.
again? Because I'm looking at this as a parent.
Right.
If I were a parent paying my child's tuition
Right.
to go to college
Right.
and get an advanced degree, I'd be saying,
what do they do?
what are you going to do?
That's correct.
Going to, yes.
A very good question, as it is with most liberal arts. And in fact, what we find is that companies hire accountants when they need accountants. Companies who need people with a broad range of undergraduate and master preparation skills, and then can decide upon them for themselves. I'm in media, and I want to be a leader in media. So I'm going to design a program that brings in courses from business and organizational leadership, courses from higher and adult education that helps me know how to work with adults, courses in philosophy that help me deal with logic, courses in related areas of communication, and with that, I will be able to have a doctorate degree, a higher promotion, and lead the agency associated where in Price Waterhouse, a division associated with that. Liberal arts majors become some of the greatest leaders because of the broad range of opportunities and knowledge bases that they have. It's not the profundity of the discipline that guides the leadership, it's actually the breadth and the opportunities that they bring in terms of that wonderful breadth of knowledge that helps to guide that leadership. Another area that's really in Georgetown, the reason why it's such a popular area is because for the millennials, that's the population that you're talking about, the new graduates, the people who graduate and they are still maybe below 25. Not this population who are 25 and older and already working, but they go into this doctoral liberal studies because they're interested in a doctoral degree in social justice. So most of these folks seeking this kind of degree would design courses in sociology, understanding the culture of poverty, understanding the importance of diversity and inclusive excellence, and religious leaders seek out this doctoral degree because it's not a doctoral degree in religious studies often in the area, and that's some of the major places in which they are hired to become leaders of some nonprofit organization. So this breadth and customization really does support, especially those people who have come to us and said, I need this. One recent personality, very popular in media and in the field, says, I need this degree. I'm going to bring in, I want expertise in health communication, and I want expertise associated with rhetoric to add to my expertise in journalism that helps me then become the leader of this affiliate station that I'm working with. And this doctoral degree will allow me the flexibility to choose the courses that I need to get in.
Thank you.
Secretary Hargett.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chairman. Name an employer for me that has said to you, we need this program. Pick an employer in Shelby County or West Tennessee or let's pick the Mid-South area, Eastern Arkansas, North Mississippi, West
Actually,
Tennessee.
the healthcare field. The healthcare field.
So is that Methodist? Is that Baptist? Name the employer.
Okay, so let me see which one's listed here. We've got the names of their support letters. Joanne, who's listed there? Is it Methodist Labana? Methodist Labana. So that's a large employer. And so I talked to a recent hire who would be the equivalent of a provost at the hospital. They're teaching classes, and they're faculty there. And this employer would like to have this doctoral level of studies. This employer happens to be currently a physician. But to gain the academic skills associated with academic leadership is something this employer, although hired, doesn't have the skill set for. This will fit in with her schedule. She doesn't have to leave that job, and it just helps her become better prepared for her discipline.
So I got to tell you, and I love my university, but when I look at this, I gotta believe there's other programs out there, doctoral programs out there that are available to people without creating a new one. So, if I can finish my point,
yes,
please.
Sorry.
If there is such a great dearth and a need, why is it that only 2 other universities in the country, not that Memphis is not interested in being at the leading edge, okay? But why is it only 2 other universities in the country are offering such this doctorate?
So these are very good questions, and ones that we ask ourselves because, again, our programs go first through faculty review and then a total graduate council review, so we have to answer these questions before we even bring them to the provost and to the president and to our board. And again, our board members have these same kinds of questions. We are leaders in our university college, which is, first of all, started off as some of the major online courses started in University College. We've been offering online courses for 45 years. Dan Lattimore was the dean, and it come from Colorado, and the first online graduate degree came from Italy 35 years ago. And so we are leaders in offering alternate routes of attaining both the knowledge needed for the courses and the degree. We are the first and leaders in actually being able to attain, if you choose, your complete degree online. We are leaders in 50th in the country in adult learners. So we've been targeting that population for a long time. Many universities can't say that about their focus on honing this particular area. Many universities don't have a university college. Ours is booming. It's our 3rd largest undergraduate program now. It's certainly the one that's represented most by not only post-traditional age, but by students from historically underrepresented populations, because it's the design your own style, that customized style that appeals most to the population without having to choose, I want a degree in philosophy, or I want a degree in education, which doesn't help that employer who I just mentioned, who's overseeing the academic mission of a medical institution.
All right, I'll yield.
Commissioner Dishner.
A question regarding the core requirements for the program. You have 15 hours, so 5 courses that the students will be taking across this curriculum. What are those 5 courses?
Okay, those 5 courses are all about foundations of interdisciplinary research, foundations of, Joanne, you have those courses listed for me.
Foundations of, there's liberal studies seminar courses, a research course. Sorry, I can't bring them up fast enough.
Excuse me, if you're,
You can
we'll
stand,
need you
please.
at a microphone if you're going to
I'm
offer
sorry.
testimony. And
So
introduce
Dr.
yourself.
Joanne Geekus is the interim dean of the University College, and the curricula is in the proposal, and she's reading from the proposal. So the courses are, you're going to come up here, Dr. Geekus. And the remaining will be designed in concert with the team of mentors based on what these students hope to accomplish at the end and also incorporate into their dissertation. So these 5 courses are.
Good morning. As Dr. Weddle-West said,
Mayor,
I'm.
if you wouldn't mind just introduce yourself
Yes,
for us.
that's
Thank
what
you.
I'm, as Dr. Weddle-West just said, I'm Joanne Geekus. I'm the interim dean of University College. We have a Master's of Arts and Liberal Studies already, and we have a number of core courses that our students need to take that are online. Those are liberal studies seminar courses. Those are research courses to prepare them for their research part of their dissertation and their capstone project later on. They will also, it's a database decision-making course, research and interdisciplinary studies, and a foundations of liberal studies. So these students will participate in those core courses, and then as they're designing their own degree, they get to take courses in other areas. So for example, if it was communication or business, they'd be able to take those courses that existed already in those program areas.
If I may,
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am,
Chairman.
you have the floor.
The reason for my question is, in the testimony, it was about the ability of these students to provide leadership. But I didn't hear anything about a leadership-based course that they will be participating in.
So the University College will not be preparing that course for their core, but the student could take that course in their program area. We felt it was suited for the individual to have a faculty member in the appropriate area that they were pursuing to teach that course as it related to leadership.
Okay, Commissioner Watson?
Has the staff evaluated this request, and if so, what's their take on the proposal?
And I'll ask Betty to please come to a microphone as well. You know, Commissioner Watson, this is probably one of the longer running conversations about an academic program. As you all see, University of Memphis has a high volume of requests right now. We bring it to you with a staff recommendation of approval, to be sure. I also think the commission process, as questions emerge, we need to be responsive to those as well. Things we were struck by. First and foremost, and I think that Dr. Weddle-West's point's well made on being a leader, Georgetown and SMU really being the only 2 other offering institutions, one of the things that Betty pushed was, well, then you need to hire them to come in and be the external consultants. They were. And they both offered, I think, favorable reviews. I'd also say this program's not where it was when it first came to us. There was an evolution over the course of the development that is kind of what you have before you now. Mm-hmm. Betty, would you like to add anything? You did the site visit personally.
Yes. Yes, excuse me.
I would like to highlight that this program, if approved, it will serve a broader audience in terms of, rather than establishing new doctoral programs for all of the liberal arts programs in the College of Liberal Arts and Studies at the University of Memphis. There are so many of these programs that the highest level are master's programs, and this program received the support from the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Memphis. So this program is very broad-based, and as a result, we'll be working with all of the departments, of course, based on the students' interests. And so rather than creating a doctoral program for philosophy, for example, this program could serve in this capacity.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
The other point I would make, Commissioner Watson, is a lot of when any new program is essentially starting a new business, and the truth comes out in the monitoring. And so we'll be able to tell a lot by the enrollment projections, immediately seeing whether or not we met. And of course, the commission would be empowered at such time to make recommendations. But I do think, I'm glad Betty brought up the point. There's a sense in which this program prevents 6 or 7 other liberal arts PhDs from needing to be created because they're able to stovepipe into this one.
And also, I must say that for the first time, I received a call just a couple of weeks ago from a student who was inquiring about, has this program been approved? And I was really surprised that they were able to locate who to call to inquire about the program.
Everybody knows you, Betty. Everybody knows you.
I was really surprised by that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Other questions? This is great discussion. Other comments, questions for anyone? Okay, Dr. Weddle-West, thank you so much. The floor is open. Treasurer Lillard makes a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second from Commissioner Johnston. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify. Yes, sir, Secretary Hargett.
I just want to say I'm going to vote no. And it is, I just think this is not prepared yet. I think we ought to be able to look at this a bit more. And I hear what you're saying about it could prevent the need for 6 or 7 other PhD programs out there. But, you know, I think people ought to know what they're getting when they see what a degree is. And when I hear Doctor of Liberal Studies and I hear what I've heard today, I don't know what I'm getting. And I think that a student ought to know and an employer ought to know. And whenever somebody sends a resume or an application for a job somewhere, and they put on there that it's a Doctor of Liberal Studies, somebody ought to know what that means. And today, I don't know what that means. So I'm not going to say I'll never support the program, but today I'm not voting for it. So I just want to be clear about
Yes,
that.
sir.
So don't gloss through the yeses and the nos.
No,
real quick.
we won't hear. In fact, I'm going to ask Madam Secretary, if you would, please. First of all, let me ask, any further discussion? We've got a motion and a second, so everything is appropriate to be considered now. Are there any further discussion on this motion to approve the program? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, would you? Yes, sir, Treasurer Lillard.
All good points have been raised here today on both sides of this discussion. The university's made some good points. I think, though, that in terms of our role in THEC, this is a close question, not unlike what the Secretary points out. But I think the university does deserve the benefit of the doubt to see whether this program is going to be the item that gives a route for other people who don't have doctoral programs available in their particular disciplines at the university to use it as a vehicle to obtain a doctoral degree. And I think that the staff monitoring that goes on after this is going to be very, very important to make sure the program does have requisite productivity. We talk a lot in our commission meetings about being more assertive about monitoring programs and also in taking action on those that need to have action taken post-approval. And I think this one certainly should fall in that category. But I do believe that the university deserves the benefit of the doubt considering its need with respect to the need for a doctoral program.
Great points. Thank you very much. Other comments or questions? Okay, Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Chairman Cope.
Aye.
Commissioner Dishner.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett.
No.
Commissioner Johnston.
Yeah, aye.
Commissioner Coben.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Commissioner Morrison. Commissioner Roach.
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford. Commissioner Solyak. Commissioner Watson.
Yes.
Commissioner Watson votes aye.
Okay.
Sorry.
Commissioner Wharton. Comptroller Wilson. Commissioner Witten.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, you have 8 ayes,
Very good.
1 nay.
Motion passes. Program is approved. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to call on Director Krause. He'd like to recognize a few folks here today.
Just to take a moment of personal privilege to do a little bit of hail and farewelling. Taylor Odell, please stand. We always hate to lose staff, but when you're losing them to the most elite higher education program in the nation, it makes it a little easier. He will be joining the PhD program at Penn in just a few weeks. Taylor has been one of the people who behind the scenes, if you walked into his often darkened office, by the way, Taylor typically had multiple spreadsheets going, and he's one of the people at THEC, and we have a lot of team members who are like this. He runs the trains that lead us to a lot of big picture policy items. Taylor, you will be missed. We look forward to welcoming you back as Dr. Odell in a few years. We also want to recognize our graduate assistants. The THEC grad assistant program in the past was a little bit kind of one-off. We standardized it last year. We have a rigorous application process. Not everybody gets a graduate assistant position, and so we're very thankful to have a diverse array of grad assistants. So I'm going to ask you all to stand. So Shelby, our graduate assistant on the left, is our first ever current K-12 teacher to serve at THEC in the summer. That has made us a better agency. So she is a full-time teacher in Kingsport City Schools, spending her summer with us. It's helped us think through K-12 partnerships in a completely different way, and we actually have some really exciting possibilities, we think, on middle school college access initiatives, and she'll be going back to Kingsport City Schools in just a few weeks. It's been a pleasure to have you. Jacob, Amberly, Bryce, and Natasha have been our traditional graduate assistant pipeline representing the University of Tennessee, Vanderbilt University. Bryce went to an undergraduate institution in Mississippi that we will not reference. But they have provided, they give us youth and energy every time they come in. They'll all be returning back to campus in a few weeks. We are very grateful for your time here. We are joined by Casey Ellis, who is another example of a different approach to this. Casey works at Austin Peay full-time in student success, and she is a fellow with us at THEC. And it really has given us the ability to have a campus perspective in the room. We all love THEC. As you all know, no one graduates from THEC. And so having someone who's on the front lines of a campus kind of being in the room has been helpful to us. And on a reciprocal basis, Dr. Emily House will be joining Dr. Brian Nolan and his team at ETSU this fall to be a campus fellow. And we really hope to grow that and continue to provide our team with firsthand perspectives of how decisions that we work on affect all of our campus partners. So we're grateful for all of your service, and Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, and appreciate everyone's hard work here. We've been going for about an hour and a half. At this point, unless there's an objection, I'd like to recess for about 15 minutes. Is there any objection to that? Okay, let's start back at 10:45.
Thank you, Carolyn. You did
Oh, wow. He's just saying that are they confused? Yeah. Oh, you have the teacher session. That's fair. Abandon the kiddos. Yeah. That's probably what happened. So is there teacher substitute tuition? I know there isn't like this. One not here. Neither referred. Right, good luck to you. Yeah, we'll see. Depends how this goes. Are you talking about the maybe. We'll see how this goes. I'm going to start drinking earlier. Oh, yeah. Yes.
Did you see the new desk? This is like this in May.
Oh.
Look, you don't have to worry about like.
No, in May, definitely.
I know. They put a new. This is new. to have like sides to it, and so it wasn't even wide enough for anything other than you tried to like open up a like your notebook would be like this.
Okay, we will pick up where we left off, and I will call on Stephen Gentile, please, sir. The 2018-19 proposed operating budgets. Mr. Gentile.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Cope, members of the commission. I, too, want to echo what was said before the intermission. We will miss Taylor Odell on our staff. He's been very important to our team. He also was the one who thought through how we could bring interns to THEC in a very strong manner. And so thank you, Taylor. We will miss you. I want to walk you through a little preliminary look into our operating budgets, exactly what it is that we do when we're looking at proposed operating budgets. And then Crystal Collins will go into more detail regarding the 2018-19 July proposed operating budgets. Part of my discussion, I want to foreshadow a bit what we plan to do as an agency with regards to financial stress tests that Treasurer Lillard requested that we engage in, and we've been thinking through that in a big way the last few months. We'll talk about how that will unfold in the coming months here at THEC. So a quick review of the budget process. This has been a process that's been going on for the last couple of months and that we've been engaged in with each of our LGIs, TBR, and UT, where the LGIs work on their budgets, the community colleges, TCATs, and the UT units. As you may recall, that comes to us here at THEC, and we review and we look into where is money going exactly? How are institutions spending money on instruction, athletics, maintenance and operation? But before it comes to us, especially from the LGIs, it's important to remember that TBR still has budget oversight over the LGIs with regards to debt, to make sure that they can maintain their debt service payments. So the budgets do go through TBR as far as the LGIs go, and then TBR sends us all the budget information and UT for their UT units. Things that we've looked at, we look at unrestricted E&G, education and general revenue, unrestricted E&G expenditures, exactly what's going to instruction, what's going to public service, research, where the money is coming from, tuition and fees, state appropriations, sales and services, and other areas. We look at the fees, the tuition and fees. In our next section, we'll have an in-depth conversation with the president's representatives from our institutions about how they landed on tuition and fees. But we look to see how that has grown over the years, what mandatory fees have been put into place. We look to see the auxiliary revenue, what is coming from bookstores, for instance, what are coming from dining services. Athletics, how much money is going toward athletics, what is coming from the general fund. And then restricted revenue and expenditures, that's not something that we report on directly, but we do have that in our information database that comes through these budgets. I happened across a 1971 or 1972 budget overview that laid the foundation for how we came across this in our THEC library. We have a library, by the way. It's a lot of fun to go down to and read old sources going back. This is something that we've been doing as an agency, as a commission, for decades. One of the first functions of THEC were to analyze and review the operating budgets. But I want to switch gears a bit and talk about what's happening at governing boards, where we are different from governing boards and from universities and community colleges and TCATs. It is the fiduciary responsibility of the universities, of the governing boards, of TBR, of University of Tennessee, to take an even closer look and to make sure that they are in good financial health. There are many ratios, many metrics to look at, to review. For instance, primary reserve ratio to make sure that the expendable reserves are sufficient and flexible. Viability ratio to make sure that debt can be covered. We've already talked about that. Return on net assets ratios, whether the institution is better off than they were in prior years. Another one being net operating revenue ratio. Is that institution living within its means? There are many other metrics that the institutions are very much engaged in that we at THEC are not involved in. Again, we are more of a policy analysis. However, when Treasurer Lillard asked us to engage in stress tests, it took a little different direction for our team because, again, we are not accountants, but we started to learn more about these processes at the institutions and to know that, for instance, these four ratios make up the composite financial index. The CFI, which is used by all of our universities and our systems to actually gauge the financial health of their institutions. And this is a conversation between the staff at these institutions and the governing boards. Here's our financial health. This is our composite financial index, which, by the way, is a 14-point scale. And there are about 13 ratios that back up this CFI. Again, when Treasurer Lillard asked about the stress test, it really gave us a great opportunity to see, wait a second, these institutions are engaging in this very deeply. And how can we then make sure that this is happening across the state to actually exercise our CFI? Yes, Mike.
And I think one of the points it represents to the commission is, though campuses, and truly we've been incredibly impressed by these campuses have been engaged in this, it is important for somebody at the state level to be tracking it as well. And when the General Assembly, as you all saw during our budget hearing this year, they don't ask us about the internal THEC budget of $16 million. They want to talk about the higher ed enterprise of $2 billion. And the ability for THEC to speak to that with confidence, we think a lot of this process is going to provide us that information. Also, I do think it's an appropriate role for the commission to both be employing stress tests and also helping think through conditions that maybe aren't what they have been in the past, because I do not believe it's an option to rely solely on tuition and fees during future downturns. And so want to thank the campuses who have really been helpful to us as we've learned, but our staff have also put a lot of thought into trying to bring back to you in November a real picture of what will happen during the next inevitable downturn in higher ed.
Okay. And so to go over quickly what we are thinking about with regards to financial stress. This is a three-phase process in which we engage with the institutions over the coming months. Like, what does happen to these ratios, the CFI being one and some supporting ratios as well, when stress occurs? Stress being a decline in state appropriations, stress being a decline in enrollment that can happen at our institutions and has happened at some institutions. And then also stress being, and Treasurer Lillard was the one who was encouraging on this front, think outside of the state of Tennessee. What if something happens at the federal level? What if policies change with regards to Title IV funding, Pels, loans? What are institutions going to do in that sense? How might those ratios decline? And then the process where THEC steps in is then to fuel that conversation. This will be happening in the coming months with those institutions to talk about, well, what are your plans with regards to stress when it happens? Many of the institutions have those plans already, and we know that it is not feasible to get into the details, like what exactly you plan to do when it comes, but the high-level discussions, what is happening at your level institution so that when the stress occurs, we know that there has been plans in place. And the third element is, what can the state do as well? And I don't mean state funding more state appropriations in that sense, but in conversations with institutions, we know that one way to weather stress is to have, and that's one of the ratios that we showed you, are reserves. How can institutions better plan for that stress outside of in the middle of the stress actions? What are some of the reliant funds can they use in case that does come to play? So these are conversations that we are having with the institutions. We're still fleshing this out. But between now and November, we are having these conversations and talking and engaging in these stress tests with the institutions. Mike, do you have anything to add? Okay. Thank you. Yeah, yes, sorry.
Comments or questions? No.
All right, I would like to bring up Crystal Collins, please, our Director of Fiscal Policy Analysis, to review the actual 2018-19 operating budgets.
Good morning. Thank you, Stephen, Mr. Chairman, Director Krause, members of the Commission. As Stephen mentioned, I'm going to briefly go over the 18-19 proposed operating budgets, focusing specifically on revenue and expenditures at our community colleges and universities. And then in direct response to conversation back in January when we provided revised 17-18 budgets, I'm going to talk some about financial aid, so other ways that the state is investing in higher education outside of direct operating dollars. And that'll be a very high-level conversation about historical trends for Tennessee as well as in the region. Let's start the conversation quickly with a brief review of legislative action. So this is the fiscal budget that institutions are working off of right now. As you'll recall, we received $1.62 billion in total recurring appropriations from the state in 1819. This includes an increase of $92.5 million in recurring funds, and that's equal to about a 6.2% increase over 1718. Of particular interest here, $55 million for productivity and salary increases at what we refer to as our formula units. So that includes our community colleges, universities, and Tennessee colleges of applied technology. $28.6 million of that is to fund productivity. So for the community colleges and universities, performance. And for TCATs, we're basing their funding on enrollment, but at a TCAT, if you enroll, you succeed near 80 to 90% of the time. So that's looking at performance in a different way. We're also received $26.4 million specifically for salary increases at those formula units. One thing I did discover while looking into legislative action that I thought was important to bring up, we've received almost $250 million in new recurring appropriations in just the last 2 years. So 1718 and 1819, $250 million new dollars. That indicates to us that the state is heavily investing in higher education. Most of this money was directed towards operating. Then the second highest category was for salaries and insurance, and then followed by a $40 million investment in recurring capital maintenance, which we received last year, which allows our institutions to maintain their buildings and their equipment and not have to expend their own funds in order to do that. So we're very grateful for that. So what the proposed operating budgets do for us is it allows for an early first look at total revenue and expenditures estimates for the new fiscal year, so the fiscal year we just started, for each of our institutions and for the sectors as a group. Looking at university revenues, the universities are proposing a estimated total revenue of $2.93 billion for 1819. As you'll see here, 60.6% of that will come from tuition and fee revenues. That's equal to about $1.7 billion in revenue. And then 31.7% in proposed revenues from state appropriations, just under $1 billion in state appropriations for our universities. That remaining 7.7%, about $190 million, will be from sales and services and other revenues. And this includes things like interest income, conference revenues, miscellaneous rentals, and sales on campuses that occur. These revenue sources continue to trend a way that we've seen over the last 4 years or so, where there's a decreasing proportion that is coming from tuition and fee revenues and an increasing proportion that is coming from state appropriations. We've said for many years post-recession that the state had divested from higher education, and what we're finding is that is arrested and started to turn the other direction. So we're seeing actually increases in investment from the state, hence that $250 million new recurring money, and we're seeing less of a reliance on tuition and fee revenue. A lot of this is also efficiency related at institutions, but it is probably most directly related to the fact that appropriations are increasing from the state. Looking at expenditures for universities, the universities continue to expend the majority of their expenses on what are considered the core academic function. These include things like instruction, research, public service, and academic support. Instruction, research, and public service, we all know those are faculty members that's actually offering courses and coursework to students. And then all of those activities are buttressed by this idea of academic support. So what does it take in order to fund the people who help your professors and who help provide those services to students? $1.35 billion in expenditures on these core academic functions. It's about 58.8%, so just under that 60% mark that we look for from our institutions. And that remaining 41.2% is other necessary functions, including things like student and direct institutional support, maintenance and operation of the physical plant, and scholarships and fellowships. Of particular interest, scholarships and fellowships have the proportion of expenditures related to that has doubled in the last decade. And that's exactly what you think it is. Those are grants at the institutional level that are being provided from the institutions to students. And so that is an investment in students by institutions. And we've seen that proportion double in the last decade. Total university expenditures, just under $2.3 billion for 1819. And again, that is in alignment with the revenue and in fact below the revenue projections. So the same information for community colleges. You'll notice that the next two slides are going to look a little different. Mostly that's because community colleges have a tighter partnership between tuition and fees and state appropriation, so they're reliant on both almost equally. You'll notice the 51.8% is coming from tuition and fee revenue, and that's just under $300 million. 46.4% generated from state appropriations, just over $268 million. And again, the overall size of the pie is smaller at universities. We were talking about $2.93 billion in revenue. At community colleges, just under $580 million. So a smaller set of revenue sources, but again, servicing 3 institutions and servicing the majority of students in Tennessee at these institutions. Looking at specifically at expenditures very quickly. So community colleges are projecting expenditures of about $343 million on the core academic function, again, focusing the majority of their expenditures on this academic function. It's about 60%, right at 59.9%. And $292 million of that $343 million will be on instruction alone. So that's where the majority of investment is happening at our community colleges. Total revenue across all of higher ed is projected to be $3.643 billion in 1819, and again, that includes state appropriations, tuition and fee revenue, and those other sales and services. Total expenditures are proposed to be $3.597 billion. So again, about a $50 million difference. So they're balanced. The budgets, the proposed budgets are balanced. Oops. Okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning, how is the state investing in higher education outside of, say, state appropriations? Again, we talk about divestment, or we have talked about divestment a lot. The state has purposefully invested in higher education in operations, but they've also done it in financial aid. And what does that look like over, say, the last 16 or 17 years? Back in 2000, the state provided, or Tennessee provided, $22 million in state-based financial aid to undergraduate students, so just $22 million back in 2000. That's at the beginning of this slide here. In 2006, which was the first year after the lottery scholarship, this lottery scholarship was established in 2004. In 2006, that had increased to $176 million, so that's where you see that first jump. And then the program matured, right? So as our classes continued to come in, the program matured, and then we peaked in 2013 with $373.6 million. So in 13 years, going from $22 million to $373 million invested in financial aid. This includes TSA and HOPE at this point, right, when we stop in 13. And so that is a significant investment by the state in either lottery dollars or direct state tax revenue into higher education outside of operating. You'll notice we see a little uptick at the end there. That's Promise. And so we're excited to see where Promise goes from here. That's a $30 million increase from 15 to 16. And we are just below $400 million total in the financial aid undergraduate programs in Tennessee as of 2016. And so in the last decade, that's a 125% increase in financial aid investment in total undergraduate students. Mayor Wharton rightfully asked me last time, well, what does this look like regionally, right? How are we comparing to states around us as far as investment? And what we're able to show here is that line graph that we just talked about for Tennessee, what does that information look like for the states around us? And what this heat map shows us is the behemoth in the room is Georgia. Okay, they have a very mature lottery scholarship program. They provide $688 million a year in undergraduate financial aid to their students. Tennessee is the third highest state in the Southeast to provide with total undergraduate financial aid. And again, at that $395 million, trailing only Georgia and Florida. Florida is about $414 million. Now, that's just overall investment. If you take into account the number of students that we're serving, right? Tennessee is a smaller state compared to Georgia and Florida. What happens when you take into account number of students? At that point, Tennessee becomes the second highest, trailing only South Carolina, who serves fewer students than we do with a smaller program, but we trail them by only $80 per student. So less than $100. And each one of our undergraduate students receives about $2,100 in financial aid from the state. Of particular interest here, Georgia drops to, I think, third or fourth. They're under $2,000 per student because they're serving way more students, even though their program dwarfs everyone else in total dollars. And Florida is third to last, with only $688 per student, even though their program is the second largest. So what this says to us is that Tennessee is not only increasing their investment in financial aid, they're doing it at a rate that allows students to receive more money year over year. And the average size of the award is growing and has been growing for the last decade. So that's all I have on the proposed operating budgets today. I would say that staff have thoroughly reviewed the 18-19 proposed operating budgets and recommend that the Commission transmit these budgets to Finance and Administration for further review and approval. And I stand ready to answer any questions you might have.
I have a question before we move into that. You know, we have a lot of criticism of things that go on in the legislature and government and everything. I think this is such great news. We ought to try to get some media of it and celebrate this and give our state credit. So,
thank you, Crystal. Thanks. Questions, Commissioner Watson?
Yeah, could you go back to one of your slides that shows it's the pie chart? It says instruction.
Yes, sir.
How much you're spent? Yeah, instruction. What goes into that component?
So this is majority salaries for professors, instructors.
All right. How, if you're going to divide that 50.8% up into salaries for faculty, et cetera, and other charges, how would that break out?
Well, I don't know the exact percentage of how that it differs from institution to institution specifically, right? So I'm looking at the information that we provide to them, and it says expenditures associated with the offering of credit and non-credit courses. I do know that institutions normally report about 70% of all expenditures are related to faculty salary and benefits. So if I had to posit a guess on that 50.8, I would say a healthy majority of that 50.8% is related to faculty salaries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? Secretary Hargett.
Microphone on, it might help. If I were to look at a 5-year trend line of that instruction number, what would it look like?
So the 5-year trend line of the instruction number for, let's look at community colleges. It's been pretty steady for over the last 10 years normally. It is declining, but not at a rate that is concerning, right? So if you look at community colleges, I believe 10 years ago instruction was about 52%. It's now down to 50.8. If you'd like, we can go back and look at universities. This university number, the 43.6, that was closer to 45, 46, 47 10 years ago. What we're finding, though, is that money is moving either into academic support or into scholarships and fellowships. It's not moving to things that would give us concern, like, say, maintenance and operation, which would show that maybe the state isn't providing appropriate funding for, like, deferred maintenance or things like that. But yes, to your point,
You anticipated my next question, so congratulations.
Oh, okay.
All right, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay.
What would be included in academic support?
So academic support, so what that is those are expenses that are directly used in order to support, say, faculty members. And so academic support includes a primary mission of it is supporting the primary mission, and it includes libraries, academic computing support, so IT, any museums, and then academic administration. So the administration on the campus that is, say, not related to student services, which would include student activities, intramural athletics, and student aid administration. So I think academic support would include your president's office, your provost's office, and things like that.
Other questions or comments? Okay, the floor is open. Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Commission transmit the 2018-19 July 1 proposed operating budgets with the Commission's comments to the Department of Finance and Administration for their review and approval, and authorize the Executive Director to make appropriate technical adjustments if necessary.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Roach. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Treasurer Lillard. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify so by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are at the point in our agenda now where we are going to have discussion on the tuition and fee development process. Stephen, I think you're going to lead the charge on introducing this and leading it for us, so proceed.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Cope, members of the commission. At our last commission meeting back in May, when we presented the binding tuition ranges, the commission made a motion and approved and requested that the presidents of each of our governing boards come to this commission meeting to discuss how they landed on their tuition and fee increases. I wanted to give a little bit of backdrop on what we have done since then. We asked each of those governing boards to provide responses to 4 questions, and we have provided those responses to you in your commission materials, where we ask them, what are the increases? What revenue and what is the purpose of that revenue will those increases go toward? What are your main cost drivers? What factors influence your decision making? And what are you, as an institution, doing to mitigate the effects of the rising costs on students? And so that has been provided to you. Those questions primarily came from questions that come in front of our Senate Finance and Senate Education Committees each and every year, but also to know that this past General Assembly passed legislation, the Tuition Transparency Act, that will require universities to post this information, primarily responses to these questions, for the next academic year. That took place, effect on July 1 of this fiscal year, and will be put in place for academic year 1920. There is a lot of similarities that you'll see in those notes. So I want to go over briefly what you may find in those, and then yield the floor to the presidents. Specifically, we think of this as a dual track, a parallel track of what our commission, what the staff does ahead of the November commission meeting, and then what's actually happening on the ground at institutions. In November, we make our tuition and fee guidance range that is based on the state appropriations requests that we make to you and then on to the governor. And that guidance range looks at our overall request and say, all right, this is where we think should the governor and then the General Assembly approve, this is where we think tuition should fall. And then, as you'll see in the notes and comments in front of you, a lot of the institutions say, well, once that occurs and once the governor comes out with his recommendation, typically in early February, that's when the action really starts on the campuses, where the departments, the units at the institutions start working on and assessing what their needs are. What are the inflationary costs? What are the increases in, say, contractual agreements with services, professional services? And then they start making those requests and then discuss those with their vice presidents and then upwards to the president. You'll see in the notes in front of you that many of the institutions have budget advisory boards that meet with the president and have outside influence from students, staff, and faculty to help guide that process. And then as we here back at THEC, back on our track here, we see as General Assembly finishes up, we then land on our binding recommendations based on where General Assembly passed into law the state appropriations. We presented that to you in May. And the months between May and now, all the boards have voted and approved their ranges, their tuition and fees, and those are in front of you for 2018-19. That took effect July 1 of this year. So the rest of this agenda item, we've decided to break this up into groups, and we're going to ask UT and TBR to come up, then we're going to ask Austin P, ETSU, MTSU to come up, and then Tennessee State, Tennessee Tech, University of Memphis to come up. And each president or their representative is prepared to talk about 5 to 7 minutes about how their institution or their system landed on their tuition and fee increases. I just want to remind you that this year has been another very low year for growths in tuition. Looking back over the last 30 years, in fact, we can go 40 years if we had the graph to show that this is the 4th consecutive year of the lowest growth in tuition and fees that has happened in higher education in the state. And that is true for universities, community colleges, and TCATs. Mr. Kraus?
Would just want to thank the presidents in advance and many of their CFOs who you'll hear from. This is the first time we've ever done this. I think it is incredibly valuable. You'll recall at our last meeting, I think one of our realizations at the staff level was we need to do a better job of educating you without asking you to vote 10 minutes later. and that is today. To really just have a conversation with campuses that I hope informs the process between now and November, in which we will bring you the next set of ranges. I think it'll be a really important discussion. And again, I want to thank the campus leaders. And I also want to say what you went through to get ready for today was a preview of what the Tuition Transparency Act, sponsored by Senator Dickerson, requires. So we hope that it was a helpful dry run.
Okay. Thank you, Director Krause. So moving on, I'd like to invite up Chancellor Florida Tidings from Tennessee Board of Regents and Ron Lowen, Assistant Vice President of Budget and Planning. Thank you.
Morning.
Morning.
Chancellor Tidings, if you can go first, please. Thanks.
Can't reach the floor. Well, good morning, and I do want to talk to you today about our 18-19 maintenance and mandatory fees. First, I want to assure you that the approval of fees is a responsibility our board also takes very seriously, as they balance student affordability with providing our colleges the resources to serve our students well. I want to briefly touch on the 4 points outlined in Executive Director Krause's June 5th letter to us. And as I do so, please keep in mind one of the unique challenges that the Tennessee Board of Regents has regarding tuition and fees, because our board governs 40 independently managed institutions from 2 sectors, the 13 community colleges and the 27 colleges of applied technology. Inherent in that is a budget process that is decentralized from the central system office. Budgets are developed at the college level, with each institution's president being responsible for engaging their campuses in the budget development process. Their budgets are developed to meet the unique needs and strategic priorities of their individual campuses. However, one thing that all institutions in each sector have in common is their maintenance fee rate, and for the most part, their mandatory fees. Given that we operate as a system, we believe that it is important for all the institutions in each sector to maintain a consistent maintenance fee structure. While there are certainly benefits to this model, there are also inherent limitations as well. While our institutions are all similar, they are disparate as well in their strategic plan, their size, their financial condition, their geographic location, their course offerings, and therefore tailoring a common maintenance fee structure that exactly serves the needs of each of 40 institutions serving 118,000 students is somewhat of a difficult task. As you will see from the materials, our community college maintenance fee rate increased 2.68%. For students taking 15 credit hours, the maintenance fee cost increased $54 per semester from $2,016 to $2,070. Tuition increases for the past 4 years were the lowest, as has already been pointed out, in the history of the Tennessee Board of Regents system, with an average of 2.83 increase per year. Furthermore, the combined maintenance and mandatory fee rate increased from 2.44 to 2.62, with the majority being under 2.5. Only one of our 13 community colleges, Columbia State, asked for a mandatory fee increase this year, where the student body voted to establish a $3 per student government fee. For the TCATs, the maintenance fee increased by 2.99% for FY 18-19, while the combined maintenance and mandatory fee rate increased by 2.81%. For a student taking a full load for the trimester, the tuition cost increased $35 per trimester, from $1,169 to $1,204. There was no increase in any of the mandatory fees at our TCATs. For the community colleges, approximately 1.4% of the 2.68% maintenance fee increase was for the institution's proportion of the 2.5% state salary increase. Approximately 1.28% of the 2.68 increase was used for various operating cost increases, including increases in utilities, academic program operations, travel, and labor costs. For the TCATs, approximately 1.6% of the 2.99% maintenance fee increase was for the institution's portion of the 2.5 state salary increase. Approximately 1.39% was used for various operating cost increases, including increase in classroom consumables, our small tool cost, utilities, equipment, and travel. Actually, the calculated amount needed for the TCAT inflation proportion was 1.9, but we capped that at 1.39%. This was to reduce control costs and stay within the overall binding ranges. Factors that we considered this year when setting the rates are factors that are common to all of our colleges, included an amount sufficient to fund all institutions' portion of the state salary increase, and as well amount to recognize the HEPI inflation index. However, in recent years, we've used three primary factors when determining the tuition rate increase. In addition to the two factors just mentioned, we have historically allowed for an amount necessary to fund special initiatives which are common to all institutions across the system. And for example, a special initiative might be the implementation of Tennessee Promise that we did last year. However, this year we ask for no common special initiative to be considered. Additionally, the factor used for the inflation calculation was reduced. For the past several years, an inflation factor was calculated that would equate to replacing 80% of the inflation cost calculated using the Higher Education Price Index, or the HEPI. This year, the inflation factor was calculated equated to 62% of HEPI. This effectively required the institutions to fund or absorb the remaining 38% of the inflationary costs through other budget reductions and efficiencies. Regarding strategies to reduce budget in other areas, our 40 colleges provided numerous examples of how they have planned or have already done so. Those include the reallocation of job duties and positions to avoid creating any new positions or deleting some existing positions where they could reallocate those jobs. Refilling open positions at a lower salary, which is possible when you have individuals who have served in a position for a long time. They have those increases over time, so we were able to replace with newer incoming lower salaries. The review and closure of any low enrollment programs that we might have. If we had programs that were not leading to direct job outcome and placement rates, we've looked at those, we've examined those, and we've made allocation to close those. Implementation of more energy efficiency measures across our campuses, and process and productivity improvement across all campuses. From a system perspective, an additional measure taken was that during the last legislative session, a bill was passed that would allow our board to combine TCATs where appropriate and thereby reducing administrative costs. We would not close any campuses that would serve a community, but we would consolidate administrative functions, allowing for that to be more of an instructional cost rather than an administrative cost. We believe these examples demonstrate that our colleges are continually looking for ways to manage costs and reallocate resources to make the most effective use of resources available to them and to reduce the need for exorbitant tuition increases. One noteworthy point is that we have just completed an economic impact study for the Tennessee Board of Regents, looking at what type of impact we are having across the state with the institutions, the 40 institutions that we serve. We do operate in 198 locations across the state. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we served 118,000 students. For the 16-17 academic year, the economic impact for our system resulted in a $1.06 billion total economic output for the state of Tennessee. So I thank you for listening to me on my explanation for this. I thank you for helping us fund what we provide for the state and for the citizens of Tennessee.
Thank you, Chancellor Tidings. Do we want to have questions at this point, or do we want to let everybody at the table comment first and then questions? What's the pleasure? We'll just go one at a time. Then questions for Chancellor Tidings.
Thank you.
Commissioner Coben.
Could you just repeat the last statement you made with the economic impact? What was the figure?
1.06 billion. And we did that in conjunction with the Department of Economic Development in the state of Tennessee. They were the ones that provided that economic impact study.
Thank you. Secretary Hargett.
Chancellor, are those remarks prepared?
Yes, sir.
Would you mind sharing those so we could get those in the minutes?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
They are in your materials.
I don't think my notes are, but I will absolutely provide those.
Okay.
Am I on there?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you for having me this morning. President DiPietro sends his regrets. He is at the Milan No-Till Field Day today. That's one of the big events in West Tennessee and in for our agricultural programs. He also sends his regrets in particular for having to send me. My boss, our Chief Financial Officer, David Miller, is on a business trip, happens to be in Long Beach, so I'll be looking at his travel reimbursement claim very closely when he gets back. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about how we approach tuition and fee decisions at the University of Tennessee. One thing that has made this process probably less painful in recent years than in years before that has been we really have had a good funding environment from the state. And we have to acknowledge that a big reason why we've been able to have 4 years in a row of record-setting low tuition and fee increases is because the state has approached funding higher education as a partnership and helping to manage affordability. And we've got to, we've got to be grateful for the General Assembly, the administration, as well as you all in THEC in recognizing that and making funding higher education a priority. I mentioned we've had historically low tuition and fee increases over the last 4 years. We've been at or below 3% in each one of those years. I think we've ranged from 3%, 1.8%, and 2.2%. This year, we aren't doing an across-the-board strategy at all of our campuses the same way. We're doing no increase at Knoxville, no increase at Chattanooga, but a 3% increase at UT Martin. And I think earlier, I think Steve was talking about the financial stress tests. If you look at UT Martin, and I'll talk about them a little bit more in a moment, their CFI on their, I forget which revenue, it's the net operating revenue, is relatively weak. And that's one reason why we felt like they needed to continue to get some revenue growth from that revenue stream this year, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. I was here at the last meeting, and folks were asking, and I think quite appropriately, why do we need to raise tuition when the state's given us everything we ask for? And I think that is a good question. In November, when THEC staff puts together the recommendations, it's in a context of here's how much we're recommending that these institutions receive from the state, along with some flexibility to adjust tuition and fees. They provide a range, and that range, I think one reason why it is a range and isn't across the board is because they recognize each of these institutions is in a different place relative to their markets, relative to their peers, and relative to their financial condition. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've had this year for the first time in a long time, we've had some variation in how our campuses approach things. When we look at why we would need some additional revenue streams in addition to state funding, one of the slides that was showed a little over 30% of the funding at most universities comes from the state of Tennessee. So if you extrapolate that out, a 10% increase in state appropriations is roughly the equivalent of a 3% increase in total revenue growth. Now, we'd love to get a 10% increase from the state, but I would say that David Thurman would probably look at me and say, we can't lift that. And so we recognize that part of what we have to do is manage those other revenue streams as well as the cost side of the books to be able to come up with the funding that we need to keep the operations going without having the state to try to step up and provide all of that revenue differential, because it just wouldn't be possible. Besides just keeping up with inflation, too, I think you've noticed in some of the program proposals you saw this morning, a few of the comments there show that we're not in a static marketplace. Each one of the campuses, whether they're 2-year or 4-year programs in the state, has a set of, you might call, competitors who are making investments in different areas of student services, different types of program enhancements, such as professional advising, career counseling, other types of tutoring and learning support that help students graduate on time. And that's something that when we see our institutions making some enhancements, we have to try to keep up with those as well, and that's something we have to find revenue to do. Talking about the different financial situations and things that we looked at this year whenever we came to our tuition and fee proposals, when you look at UT Martin, the one institution that's raising their tuition and fees, they're in a unique situation in that several years ago, they had about a 5-year decline in enrollment that took them well below capacity. There have been some leadership changes that have energized that campus. We've seen a turnaround. Freshman enrollments have grown the last 2 or 3 years significantly, but it's probably going to be 3 or 4 years of those kinds of efforts before they get back to capacity and before they have the kind of total tuition and fee growth that they need to make their programs viable. That's one reason we felt like they needed to go ahead and raise tuition to try to continue the improvements they've made. It's worth noting the last 2 years they've made some modest tuition increases and they've seen large increases in student enrollments. And also when they made some recent tuition increases 2 or 3 years ago, their student government association strongly endorsed that. The reason why the student government organization had a seat at the table in deciding where those funds were invested, in trying to make sure that the funds were invested in ways that are going to enhance their educational progress as well as their career possibilities. Knoxville and Chattanooga, I think in both of those cases, what we've seen this year, when we look at them next year, will they be able to continue zero? It's not absolutely certain. Obviously the state funding is a big piece of that. A couple of things that were kind of unusual this year, UTK looked at their enrollment growth over the last 2 or 3 years. Their actual enrollment was higher than projections. They were bringing in higher revenue streams than they had put in their budgets the last 2 or 3 years, so they made an adjustment. They didn't need to do an increase this year in order to be able to have the revenue growth that they had not worked into previous year budgets. Chattanooga, they performed real well under the performance funding formula. They've seen good state funding growth over the last 5 or 6 years as a result of that. Looking in the future, they had some great enrollment growth that's starting to cap out a little bit. Not sure if that type of performance funding will continue for them or not. When we look at how we make our tuition and fee decisions, a flip side of looking at the standard full sticker price of tuition and fees is also the type of financial aid that students receive. So we do look at net price as far as trying to assess affordability. And net price is that full sticker price of tuition and fees less the amount of grants, waivers, and financial aid that students receive. An example of the net price, say at UT Knoxville, in fall 2016, their mandatory fees and tuition was $12,724. The average net price paid by students was $5,995, less than half of that. Similar, but that varies greatly by where students are at. There's no two students that have exactly the same net price. If you look at UT Martin last fall, and about a fourth of their students came from families that earn from $32,000 to $66,000 a year, their net price was $97 for the year. If you look at their 25% of students that come from families earning $32,000 or less, they actually, after they paid tuition and fees, they had an additional $2,000 or so to use for things like housing and books and those types of things. So I think we provided some materials in what went to you all on how that average net price works out by income quartile. And as you would expect, the higher the income, the higher that net price is. But it's one side that when we're looking at setting the pricing and setting tuition, we're not looking just at the gaps we have to fill in the budget. Being the budget director, that's how I tend to look at it. Fortunately, we have other people that are looking at the affordability issues that help provide some perspective. Another thing that we've been putting more focus into in recent years is, a key element in affordability is not just what your net price is in any given year. How long does it take you to get that degree? What's your net cost of actually getting a degree over 4 or 5 years? the majority of students who graduate spend 5 or 6 years to do it. They don't actually get out in 4 years. When you think about spending an extra year in college, paying an extra year of tuition and fees, deferring a year of earning a paycheck, that's a big price. And so in some cases, we've looked at if we actually increase the price for a given year, if we can be strategic about how we use those funds and remove bottlenecks to getting out in 4 years, provide better advising and learning support to shorten that time to degree, those students who might graduate in 4 years instead of 5 or 6 will actually end up paying a smaller cost than they would have otherwise. I think you've seen, over the last few years since the funding formula was changed to a performance funding model a few years ago, when I come to these meetings, I hear all of the institutions talking about how they've sharpened their focus and strategies around progression, around time to degree. And it really, the funding formula has leveraged and pushed that behavior more so than I would have anticipated. I think we do see some statistics that show that and suggest we're making some success in reducing that time to degree. I'll make 2 other comments quickly and won't go through the rest of my notes since I know we don't have a lot of time. Another affordability indicator that we take a look at and monitor is student debt. And typically when you look at media coverage on student debt, you see an average number, you see an example of a student that really is burdened by an excessive level of debt. You don't see a great deal of analysis in what the debt looks like. We included in your materials some statistics, kind of a breakdown on debt for our graduates in 2016. If you start kind of looking down under the overall average, you'll see that nearly 2/3 of our students who graduated in 2016 had under $20,000 in debt, and 44% graduated with no debt at all. That debt is, I think, a direct indicator of affordability. It's one of those factors that we're looking at and monitoring as we look at pricing. I think I probably better stop there. I've probably exhausted most of my time.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions? Now, I have, go ahead, Commissioner.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to pose this. I meant to do this at the beginning, but I just want to pose this, I guess, to both of you and for everybody who's going to present today. When we saw the pie charts, we talked about the revenue piece, and part of the revenue piece were sources of revenue other than state appropriations and tuition and fees. What are you doing to actively pursue sources of revenue other than tuition and fees and state appropriations? And the second part of the question is there anything state government can do that would help or assist institutions in being able to pursue other revenue sources?
One of the things that we're doing at the Tennessee Board of Regents is a lot of that falls under the area of grants. And so we do have people that work actively to write grants, both in the institutional level and in the system level. We also work with THEC on writing some of those grants. Many of our campuses are quite resourceful in getting donations from other revenue sources, particularly in the area of equipment. We have a lot of employers in the state of Tennessee that do support our industry, and they will give and donate equipment or give that at extremely discounted, so sometimes that's counted in other revenue areas. Many of our campuses have to be a little bit creative in how they go about funding that, and so our presidents are quite known for going out and begging and asking industry to help us to do that, so that counts in our other revenue area.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say President DiPietro is spending a lot of his time in Milan today begging as well. I think for our 3 formula units, and the campuses in Knoxville, Martin, and Chattanooga, I think that piece of the pie is maybe about 5% of the revenue stream. And that 5% is kind of an amalgamation of a lot of different types of funding sources. So we've actually, over the last 4 years, Dr. DiPietro has had an advisory group that's trying to look at ways and what can we do to be sustainable without always raising tuition. One thing they've looked at is alternative revenue streams. The delta on 5% is not like the delta on 30% or 60%. So there aren't strategies there that are going to significantly move the needle. You've got to look at kind of maximizing a wide variety of things. So like one of the things that would be there is conference income. whenever we use our facilities for conferences. Well, for the most part, that income is consumed by costs related to the conference itself. But then there is some overhead markup that helps support some facilities, helps support, some IT infrastructure. So a lot of those revenue sources end up kind of helping support some of the infrastructure that's shared by the academic unit. So, like I say, we do look at it. We haven't yet found ways to significantly move the needle. Ways that the state can help. We're good about sitting around thinking about ways for the state to help. So thanks for planning that idea.
Thank you. Mr. Johnston, you had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two excellent presentations. I very much appreciate it. I just wanted to applaud Chancellor Tidings for her continued leadership in driving a system approach between the TCATs and the community colleges, both with cooperation and collaboration.
Okay, other questions or comments? Great, thank you very much. Stephen?
Thank you, Chancellor Tidings, Mr. Lowen. Moving right along, with the second group, I'd like to invite up Dr. Rex Gandy, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Austin Peay State University, President Brian Noland of East Tennessee State University, and Alan Thomas, Vice President for Business and Finance. I think we'll just continue going alphabetical order through the LGIs, starting off with Provost Gandy. Thank you.
Chairman Coe, Director Krause. Is that working now? Is that on? Yes. Yep. Thank you. Chairman Cope, Director Krause, distinguished members of the commission, thank you for allowing Austin Peay State University to present this today. President White sends her regrets. She's out of the country. I also send my regrets that she's out of the country. First of all, to preface my remarks, Austin Peay State University has the second lowest tuition and fee rate among any Tennessee university. Also, if you look over the last 10 years of tuition and fee increases, Austin Peay State University has the lowest percent increase of any Tennessee public college or university, including community colleges, and we're very proud of that. We're proud of that because it's built into our DNA. Austin Peay State University has a very high percentage of first-generation students, a very high percentage of Pell eligible students. So every day when we come to work, our first job is what can we do to keep the costs low, to provide the type of quality education that our students deserve. As far as the process goes, it starts in late fall. Once you set a tuition range that gives us an idea of what the environment is that year, we start a process at the unit level and look at, first of all, on the revenue side, any enrollment increases from the previous year will be on the table. We always budget on a 0% enrollment growth model. So first we would have those monies. Obviously that's our number one goal, is to grow our enrollment to fund our operation. Secondly, we'll have information on the state funding situation. Last several years, due to the formula funding, that's actually been very good for us, and we appreciate your support on that. Also, an important part of that process is looking at internal administrative cost savings. We constantly ask our directors, vice presidents, president's office, where can we save money? Because save money is new money. So we're looking at shutting down programs that aren't working well and putting those monies on the table for the coming year to meet the needs. The last thing we look at is a tuition increase. So once, and that's in the late fall then, we start to see how that's going to develop. Then we move through a process of budget hearings, requests from various units. We end up with a budget advisory council that has broad representation, students, faculty, and staff. They present finally around April or May. They'll present a set of recommendations for possible new funding to the president, and of course, she makes the final decision in consultation with her senior leadership team. This past year, we requested a 2.9% increase. About 2.5% of that is tuition, the rest mandatory fees. The bulk of that was to meet our strategic goal of bringing our faculty and staff salaries up to our peer average. 3 years ago, our faculty and staff were at about 88% in salary compared to our peer group. For the past 3 years, it's been part of our strategic plan and our mission to raise that to the average. We've been able to do that with this final third year, and next year will be approximately equal on our peer average. Also, other things, fixed cost increases, things like software contracts sometimes have built-in inflationary factors you have to pay for, and also we set aside some money to reach out to our military student population. About 25% of our 10,500 students are military related, active duty, veteran, or families. So that's a very important component. We set aside a small amount of increase to helpfully provide us some better services in that area. Also, we increased our scholarship budget this last year due to increased need. On the fee side, there's really three parts to it. One was our Student Rec Center. They were running a deficit for several years due to enrollment growth and increased need. And this year we asked for an increase in that. And health services. We've seen a tremendous increase in use of our health facility, particularly mental health. So that's just an area we have to put some more money in to meet the needs of our students. And finally, we put in a small graduation fee. This one's not really an increase because students, we were charging them on the day of graduation for their diploma. So we've broken that down. We put them on the payment plan. So they'll pay a small amount of money every semester as they build up to that. So on the mitigation side, I mentioned we're constantly looking for cost savings, whether it be shutting down reorganization or moving monies that are available when people retire to meet our needs. So I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thanks. Questions? Comments? Thanks. Dr. Nolan.
Is this on? Mr. Chair, members of the committee, good afternoon.
I don't know what it is.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, good afternoon. On behalf of our Board of Trustees, it's my honor to present to you the overview of the budget and the manner through which tuition and fees are established at East Tennessee State University. Just as a point of context, we're an institution that was founded in 1911 for a singular purpose, to improve the quality of life for the people of our region, and that mission runs through much of the material that I'll present to you this afternoon. We have 14,608 students who enrolled at the university in the fall across a broad range of academic programs, ranging from the Quillen College of Medicine to Bluegrass Old Time Country Music Studies. Of those students, 40% are Pell eligible, and of those students, 87% receive some form of state or federal or institutional financial aid. We have about 2,600 employees, and salary and benefits comprise approximately 70% of our total expenditures. As you look at the budget process at our institution, it's very similar to that at Austin Peay. It's a process that begins once THEC signals its intent. So in the fall, when you put forward your recommendation to the governor and you established your tuition ranges, we then began to act. Shortly thereafter, I met with our Board of Trustees and outlined the framework for engagement, and then we began the campus process. This past year was the first year in which we implemented a new budget structure at our university, moving to a decentralized model, hoping to infuse an entrepreneurial DNA in each of the colleges across the campuses. Those colleges are now responsible for bearing a portion of their costs, and they, if they grow, have the opportunity to retain a portion of the revenues. So a shift in orientation, hoping to put ownership at the dean's level for budget decisions as well as for efficiencies. We put our budget call out to the campus in November. It was a budget call that was predicated on a 2 to 3% salary enhancement. We didn't quite know what the governor would recommend. And then we put a maximum fee range of 3%. That budget process is also new to the university. Everything is open and transparent. All the materials are on the web. So you could go on the web today and see every single request from every single vice president, and you can track that process through. Over the course of December through April, our Budget Advisory Committee met and considered budget requests from each of the units within the institution. I had to give a budget presentation to the Budget Advisory Committee just as every other member of the campus. Overall, that group considered more than $10 million in requests for new funding, which was then whittled to $5.8 million, which was then whittled to $1 million. So when everything was said and done, there was about $1 million worth of new revenue that worked through the campus as a result of the process. Those new revenues went to everything from support for public safety, counseling, advising, across the board. But the bulk of the activities that were associated with that new revenue went to new programs and program support. We have the largest college of nursing in the state of Tennessee, and as that program looks to grow, we need to add new faculty. So we either went to program costs or some administrative support costs. Salary is the number one priority within that budget process. It's the number one priority to the board. Within the governor's increase, that 2.5%, that required about a 1.75% fee increase to cover our portion of the salary enhancement. Our salaries are not where we want them to be. On the salary side for staff, among our peer institutions, we have the lowest staff salary of any of our peers. Average staff salary is $41,000. Our faculty salaries are second to the bottom. Only Georgia Southern is below us. Our average faculty salary is $61,000. So making investments in faculty salaries is important to us because it's a competitiveness issue. As we look to recruit physicians, nurses, computer scientists, et cetera, to the university wanting to focus on quality, salary is a driving force in our ability to track those individuals. Our new revenue requests align with the strategic plan, and then ultimately we presented this budget to our board in April. We looked to do something that had not occurred in the modern history of the university, and that was convey to our students before they left for the end of the semester what their tuition and fees would be and what their scholarships would entail. Traditionally, that's a process that occurs during the summer. The semester ends, young men and women go home, and they find out in June or July what the fees will be for the fall. We wanted to do that in April, and it was one of the byproducts of the governance change. We were all very nervous when the commission met several months ago because our board had already approved fees, and in the event that you moved in a different direction, we would have to go back and re-communicate to students and the public what their fees would be as well as scholarship packages. Scholarships are important. 14% of our overall budget goes to scholarships. That number is higher than any other institution in the state. Much of it is predicated on our geographic alignment. We've made an effort to grow in Western North Carolina and the upstate of South Carolina, and we've had to scholarship that in order to make our tuition positioned in a manner that allows us to grow from those areas. As you look at the areas in which we made investments, as I mentioned, the bulk of it was within salaries. But I want to talk a couple minutes, and I'll be brief, on policy issues. One of the elements that we all need to remember as we look at budgets within institutions is that the cost of production is not consistent across majors. My discipline's political science. It's much more efficient for an institution to put me in front of a group of students and teach Intro to American Government than it is for us to teach upper division nursing or medicine or pharmacy or public health or any of our professional programs. That cost of production is something that we need to work through, and it factors into our conversations on fees on campus. Another thing is the shifting costs at institutions due to promise. We're very pleased with the fact that our transfer numbers will be up this year, but we also recognize that several years ago we lost about 10% of our freshman class, and the production function is most efficient at the freshman and sophomore levels. It's much more expensive to educate students at the junior and senior level. Our student-to-faculty ratio overall is 19-1. In the upper divisions, it's 16-1. So there are cost drivers that move through a lot of the policy considerations that you all face here in Nashville. Then there's also investments that we've made in student success. 3 years ago, we hired 12 new advisors across the institution. That was at a cost of $780,000. Those new advisors yielded a retention increase of 3%. And I want to put that in context. In 2012, our fall-to-fall retention rate was 62%. This past fall, our fall-to-fall retention rate was 78%, highest in the history of the university. Those advisors played a role there, but that was a sunk cost up front. We recognize that downstream there'll be revenue growth associated with it, about 1.3 overall, but you still have the upfront costs of hiring the advisors. We've hired advisors in financial aid, a very complicated landscape. About 30% of our students are pulled for verification. And if you ever know someone who's been pulled for verification, God help them. But there's a lot of hand-holding that's required, so you've got to bring support staff on board to assist students through that process. We're also concerned about quality, and quality drives everything we do at the institution. We're a university with a service mission. Our board is pushing us to be much more involved in economic and community development activities. We run nursing clinics, physician clinics, and other clinical operations all across our region. We're focused on population health, and we're an institution that literally touches the lives of people in our region from birth to death. Because you enter the world at the hands of an ETSU physician, you begin daycare on our campus, you enroll in kindergarten at the university school, and then when you exit the world, who runs the morgue? We do. So there's a full scope of activities entailed therein, and when you look at costs and revenues, it's not as simple as you would think just putting someone in front of a classroom and doing education, because there's a service connection associated with that mission that was established by our founding president to make a difference in the lives of the region. And I'll close with a point on cost. We are all concerned about the cost of college. We're all concerned about student debt. 54% of our students who graduate from the university graduate with debt, but that means 46% graduate with no debt at all. And as you look at those drivers, we're focused on efficiencies we've outlined in our materials for you, means through which we have attempted to reduce programmatic costs, administrative costs, et cetera. But we're a personnel-intensive business, and our ability to do the things that you're expecting of us to meet the Governor's Drive to 55 goals are predicated on providing outstanding service, outstanding quality, and then ultimately for us, growth. We recognize that state appropriations are increasing, but they're still relatively limited in their ability, as the University of Tennessee noted, to increase significantly. We recognize concerns around costs, so for us to move the needle on things that are important, we've got to grow. And growth in many respects is linked to scholarships, and as you see in our material, as fees increase, our scholarship costs increase. And $1.4 million of the new expenditures that will move through our budget this year are just simply the increased cost of scholarships. Mr. Chair, you asked the question about downstream revenues. For us, the bulk of downstream revenues are within our clinical operations. We met this week. I met with every chair in the Department of the College of Medicine, every chair of departments in the College of Medicine, driving home the importance of growing clinical revenues, because those clinical revenues provide a greater opportunity for investments in the educational infrastructure. But grants and contracts, particularly at the federal level with reductions in NIH and NSF, are increasingly competitive. So we're all striving to increase those revenues outside of tuition and fees, but that landscape's complicated. We'd be happy to address questions and apologize if I exceeded my time limit.
No, thank you very much for the information. Questions, Commissioner McCoven?
Thank you so much, President Owen, for that presentation.
Thank you.
Very factual and interesting. I do have a question. When you discussed your faculty salaries, average salary, I think you said was $61,000.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you experiencing faculty turnover at ETSU that you think is maybe higher than it should be?
I wouldn't say we're suffering from turnover that's higher than expected, but I would say that historically we're an institution that has recruited outstanding faculty and staff. They'll have a 4 or 5 year run at the institution, and then they'll quite often leave for better offers. If you look within our state, I could pretty quickly put together a list for you of all of the faculty and staff that we've lost to in-state institutions who are able to afford higher salaries than we present at the university.
There's a lot of that going on.
Dr. Nolan, has your enrollment recovered from the drop you experienced because of Promise?
Well, I'll phrase it this way. I made a joke at our board retreat. When I arrived, we had 15,503 students. We now have 14,680. I've done a great job. We are seeing a little bit of an increase. We had 2,052 freshmen last year. This year will be about 1,950. We were able to offset the decline in Promise by focusing on Western North Carolina. Well, this year, North Carolina Promise went into effect, and those students are now able to attend WCU at a significantly reduced rate. So we're going to have to pivot our strategy again, because our North Carolina strategy may not realize the yield that we have in years past.
Thanks. Other questions or comments? All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Cope, members of the commission. It's my pleasure to be here today to present just a brief overview of our budget process, our tuition and fee setting process, as you really can't talk about one without talking about the other. They go hand in hand. First of all, I want to say President McPhee sends his apologies for not being able to attend this very important meeting, but he has been delayed in his travels and was not able to get back into the States for this meeting. So I want to preface my remarks this morning by offering my thanks for the continued support of this commission. We're extremely grateful for the commission's annual request for the higher education funding that we receive each year. It allows us to expand, enhance our educational opportunities available to all our citizens, and for your leadership in allocating the limited resources across a broad array of institutions, which I think you've seen here today. Earlier this summer, MTSU responded to the questions sent out by the THEC staff in regards to our rationale of the 2018-19 maintenance and mandatory fee increases, and I understand you have been provided a copy of those in your materials today. While our efforts over the past few years have focused on the personal and academic successes of each student, we recognize our mission isn't just about serving the high achievers. It is also providing access to an affordable education to all Tennesseans. We are extremely proud that we continue to serve many of the state's first-generation students, as roughly 40% of our undergrads are first in their family to attend a college. In addition, we continue to serve the most at-risk students, with nearly 50% of our entering freshman students qualifying for Pell grants and other need-based students this past year. This is why the first priority in setting our annual budget and our tuition rates is to ensure affordability and accessibility while keeping our student debt low. We're proud that we still maintain the second lowest administrative costs to the state of all the LGIs and continue to have the lowest tuition and fees of the state's 3 largest institutions. Our annual tuition and fee setting process starts with a review of the university's budget, including current and anticipated resources. The budget process starts with analyzing how well MTSU performs in each of the funding formula metrics, which is sent out by THEC staff each November. This data is reviewed by our Student Success Task Force. It's also reviewed by our executive leadership team, as well as other leaders within the institution, like our Office of Research Services, with an in-depth review and discussion over fluctuations in each of the categories. Remediation plans are put in place immediately for any metric that experiences an unanticipated decline, so we can address this rather quickly. Once the preliminary funding through the formula has been anticipated by THEC and we know what is going to be included in the governor's budget, budget hearings are held by the president with each academic dean and each division head. Each unit must present an operational and budget plan that includes not only the funding request for the current year, but also accomplishments, successes from the prior year, and what was used to with the funding that was received from the prior year. And then also a detailed discussion of how existing resources were first looked at to help offset any new funding request that comes forward. With almost 70% of the university's budget in personnel costs, departments have seen little or no growth in operating and travel budgets over the past several years, and they have been expected to operate within existing budgets. From the various requests that we identify through those individual budget hearings, an overall university-wide priority list is developed by staff. This listing is then vetted by many of the same groups, including from your materials. This will result in an increase of $4 million in maintenance fee revenues and $1 million in revenues from mandatory fee increases. For 2018-19, MTSU made the decision to invest an additional $2 million in salaries to address the ever-increasing gap between our actual salaries and our current peer market salaries, as have been identified in our approved compensation plan. In addition, $1.5 million was needed to cover the additional 2.5% mandated state salary increase for state employees that was not funded by the state. These will be the first salary market adjustments made by the university since 2012-2013, almost 6 years ago. which has resulted in our faculty salaries being at only 89% of our peer institutions. This gap has grown steadily over the past several years and has started to really impact the hirings within our specific disciplines. Other expenses besides salaries to be covered by the maintenance fee include related increases in scholarships and other fixed costs of the university, such as software maintenance agreements, utility costs, and the other fixed costs that a campus has. One example is our Scholars Academy Institute, which is designed to serve all students, but has an emphasis on the needs of first-generation and Pell-eligible students. This is an institute that is a 2-week immersion program that brings students in before the semester starts, and it focuses on the needed skills for success of incoming freshmen and has proven to be beneficial to those students, especially those first-time students. Much of our revenues generated through the mandatory fee increases are being used by our auxiliary units and other self-supporting units that we have on campus. Since these units must be self-supported, totally self-supporting, they must cover the additional salary requirements that are provided by the state, as well as inflationary increases in their operating expenses as well. Even though MTSU reallocated $1.2 million from our existing resources, there remains over $3 million of unfunded budget requests that were identified in the budget hearings, and these are mainly in our academic and IT areas. MTSU is very committed to controlling the growth in our major expenditure categories while protecting the core mission of academics and instructional activities. Some examples include we have developed an innovative partnership with Bridgestone Americas, which has led to the establishment of a certificate program in applied leadership training and a degree pathway for those currently already in the workforce. Our mechatronics engineering program was a partnership with business and industry that engages students all the way from high schools through the community colleges and into our university, providing skills-based education to meet the needs of the state's rapidly growing manufacturing sector. And a last example involves the support of the Governor's Drive to 55, which focuses on degree completion. MTSU implemented a student success initiative several years ago that has been recognized as a national leader and has resulted in some impressive student outcomes on our campus. I think it's important to note here that this initiative was possible with a reallocation of existing institutional funds to invest in 48 additional academic advisors. The university has, over the years, also been involved in several efficiency efforts to help curtail cost, and these include shifting resources to academic programs based on areas of need and growth as these change from one year to the next. MTSU's terminated 6 academic programs, including 2 majors, 3 concentrations, and 1 certificate program. An additional 6 academic programs were inactivated and 2 majors consolidated into a single academic degree for increased efficiency. The university has increased online course offerings as a response to student demand by providing greater availability for classes. The university has initiated and completed several capital projects at our central heating, cooling, and cogeneration plants, as well as utility distribution systems, resulting in both energy and operational efficiencies. The campus has also underwent several projects involving LED lighting and water conservation through our Sustainable Campus program. University contracts with several third parties to provide efficiencies and cost savings in the areas of print management, a student call center, and in various services that are offered through the EAB, our Educational Advisory Board. As budgets are completed and developed in future years, we would hope that there will be consideration at the state level of fully funding mandatory increases in salaries and support for legislative mandated fee waivers and tuition and discounts. Just looking at our current budget, our expenses, we have $4.1 million in our current budget related to these two items, which equates to a 2.7% increase in student tuition. As I wrap up, Chairman Cope, thank you once again for allowing us to come and give you a brief overview of these processes, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Questions at this point? I'm going to ask, I guess, for both for MTSU and Austin P, my earlier question about alternative revenue sources, and I recognize, I think it's a good point, that it's hard to move the needle a whole lot with respect to those, but are you actively looking at other revenue sources other than appropriations and tuition and fees? And is there anything that the state can do to, this may not be the right phrase, but to free up universities to be able to do more of that?
Okay. We do, you know, and as Dr. Nolan said, and there's, and some of the other universities as well, that's a small piece of the pie. Ours is probably running about 8 to 10% of the total budget. Some of it I talked about here was partnerships with, you know, the larger industry and trying to get their support, not only support for sending us students and providing to the workforce, but also financial support to support those programs. Also, as one of the other institutions alluded to, grant writing. We are very aggressively have a grant writing department that goes out and works with each of our faculty members, and that is a first line defense for any funding request. If there is any funding out there to obtain, we try to get them into that avenue, which then relieves the university's overall budget from that area.
That's great. Thank you.
Also, obviously, grant activity can be really helpful, particularly in faculty's professional development activities. We've emphasized that a lot over the past several years, and it looks like for this year that just closed out, we would be at the highest level of external funding in the history of the university, about twice what it was 3 years ago. So that's an area we've really emphasized. Example of that would be our Center for Geographical Information Studies. That's a totally self-funded activity, has 5 or 10 staff that are paid on grants from the state, from federal, from cities that use that GIS information. A lot of students get jobs there and help in their education. So that's a very important area, and we're really looking to grow that.
That's great. Thank you. Other questions or comments? Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Provost Gandy, President Nolan, and Vice President Alan Thomas. Moving on to the third group, our last group, Tennessee State University, President Glenda Glover, Tennessee Tech University, President Phil Oldham, University of Memphis, Raj Kurapati, Chief Financial Officer. Thank you.
Good morning, or good afternoon. Chairman Cope, members of the commission, thank you for this opportunity to speak about the budget development process at Tennessee State University. I wish to first say that as president of TSU, my total focus on student success. With approximately 97% of our student body that receives some type of financial aid, I am sensitive to the financial roadblocks that fee increases can cause to the roadblocks to success of this pathway. So one of my goals each year is to have the lowest overall cost of all the public universities in Tennessee. And I strive to achieve that goal through smaller fee increases and more institutional effectiveness and efficiencies. The budget process at TSU starts with developing fees. TSU has the lowest fees of the 6 institutions. We're not next to the lowest. We're the lowest fees of the 6 institutions. So each year, the department chairs and the deans submit their fee requests with the justifications to the vice presidents. And the students are allowed to do the same thing. They present the same opportunity to go through their vice president of student affairs for their fee increases. THEC provides us with the guidance we need for the range each year that we request to stay within for the maintenance fee increase, as well as the overall cap on the mandatory fees. So the fee requests are reviewed by the university's budget committee in line with our strategic goals and our campus priorities. And they make the recommendations to me, and most times I sit in on those meetings. In fact, I think all the times I sit in on the meetings. And I'm provided with information with when each fee was last adjusted and the amount is expected to generate. We try to increase the same fee as infrequently as possible, and generally don't approve any fee that's going to generate $25,000 or less. So we try to find a way to fund that through just some expenditure needs internally without adjusting the fee for that. But at TSU, the majority of the fees remain the same from year to year, such as out-of-state tuition, because the premium that those students pay is already extremely high. This year, for example, we continue to charge a premium of $6,678 per semester for out-of-state undergraduates taking 15 credit hours. That is substantially more than the $2,555 that we receive for their in-state counterparts. So we try to keep that fee the same. But although that fee has not changed for nearly a decade, we do have a few fees that may increase regularly, such as the maintenance fees. We have some fees that are relatively regularly, such as housing fees. And then some increase only at the recommendation or the vote of our students, such as an SGA fee that they voted to approve last year. And some are occasionally terminated or repurposed, such as debt service fees, when we repurpose some funding for our new health science building that was approved last year or so. So now regarding the maintenance fee, the fiscal 2018-2019 increase is 2.59%, or $87 for full-time students, that's per semester. This percentage was calculated after considering all the other approved mandatory fee increases first, and then determining the amount that the maintenance fee could be increased in order for the university to stay within that 3%. The fees that generate the most discussion are the mandatory fees, as they require board approval and THEC review. But we also carefully scrutinize the non-mandatory fees that are presented to me. And although non-mandatory fees are not assessed to all the students, they can have a great impact on those who they affect. For example, meal plans, that's a non-mandatory fee, but it's still considered an overall budget process. So when the budget office projects the total generated from all the fees, and of course the other sources, such as the state appropriations, we're able to generate the revenue budget. And from there, we create the expense budget. So I want to stress again that our budget fee ends with developing the expenditure budget, and it starts with developing fees. It does not start with expenditures and then back into fees. Both the fees and the budgets are submitted to our board for review and approval. And I encourage input from the university departments related to their fees and the budgets. Although for the last several years, we've been almost exclusively in the reallocation mode because of extremely limited funds, we still have conducted the budget hearings at the division level, because it's important to make sure that I have a feel for the campus needs and the campus priorities. Now, as you know, education is a personnel-related, personnel-intensive business, with the majority of the cost increases we experience each year relating to salaries and benefits. For the July budget, the salaries and benefits are projected to increase $2.5 million, of which $1 million is state funded. When we looked at the other costs, minus other resources such as the outcomes formula, it still remained an unmet need of about $1.5 million, which our maintenance fee increase will almost cover. And the maintenance fee will cover it only because we had already cut $5 million from our expenditure budgets. These budget cuts were necessary in order to minimize fee increases to the students. We also instituted new efficiency strategies relating to software, utilities, staffing, and many more. So there are many areas that we need to strengthen with additional funding, especially those related to degree completion. So budgeting for our needs is an ever-evolving process in which I keep the interests of our students at the forefront. I see the hard work of the faculty and the staff, and I want to assure you that we strive every second of every day to be good stewards of the fiscal and the financial resources that's been entrusted to me as president and to TSU. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also want to answer the question you asked about our alternative revenue sources. We have a committee that's been put together. I think it was during our strategic planning process a little over a year ago, and we developed that committee to come up with the new some funding sources. We're looking at alumni donations, increasing that. The corporate donations, we're increasing that. And we've done well with alumni increases. And then the federal and state funding, our 1890 funding, which you do extremely well with 1890 funding with the Agriculture Department. And so, and we're also, being in Nashville, we're able to have conferences and seminars on campus and charge for that. So we are really trying to sell that a little bit more. And I have to commend THEC and the state for the HBCU initiative, because the person had that initiative has brought a lot of education to the HBCU giving model, and has helped our alumni understand a little bit at a higher level the importance of giving back to HBCUs. And so we're trying to, that's a model that we have embraced, and it's helping our university. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Thank you. Questions or comments? Great. Thanks very much.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Director Krause. It's a pleasure to be with you on behalf of the Board of Trustees of Tennessee Tech and present to you today. I'll try to take maybe a slightly different approach. Not to say that we're not doing a lot of the same things that everybody else is, but you've heard all of that. And so I'll try to cut through some of this and maybe some things that we're doing a little bit differently. Let me just say that everything that we do at Tennessee Tech is related to the return on investment of students, and that's where our focus is. So although we're very cost conscious and we want to continue to be cost conscious, ultimately it's about making sure that the product that walks out the door has a career to look forward to and benefit of that investment. So our process for budget is a very deliberative process. It's a year-round process. Quite honestly, it never stops or finishes. We go from one phase to the next. It has multiple inputs and multiple levels of review and approval, just like others have already stated. My default position, I think our default position on the campus, is to begin with a 0% increase and start working from there and see what we can make work. But there's always this very critical balance between cost and quality, back to the question of return on investment. And so it's very important for us to maintain the level of quality that's expected so that the product is up to what we all expect. You know, we're in a very unique business enterprise in higher education. It's the only business I'm aware of where the customer and the product are the same thing. And so at times we get a little schizophrenic about that. But the truth is that student is our customer, but it's also our product, and we want to make sure that product meets those standards that they should expect of themselves. I can also assure you that we all do, I'm sure, but I certainly have a board of trustees that continually asks us those hard questions, many of the same questions that you're relaying to us today. About how are we doing this? What are we looking forward to? How are we mitigating costs? And how are we keeping the cost as affordable as possible? To that end, we at Tech, we have reduced our operating budget by close to $5 million over the last 3 years through a variety of mitigating strategies, some personnel reductions, some utility cost mitigation strategies, and so forth. That equates to probably about a 6% tuition cost mitigation, which ultimately we don't pass those additional costs on to students. But this work continues. We're in the process. We rolled out about 3 years ago a new internal budget model for the campus. It's a sort of a modified responsibility-centered management budget where responsibility and revenues are passed on to the academic units and in turn, they make those primary budget decisions based on the revenue they expect from tuition and fees and otherwise. And we believe that they can make more accurate decisions on the ground than we could at a more central location. We're also doing a predictive analytics model that looks at enrollment projections in out years and the revenue produced from that enrollment. Obviously, as others have said, about 70% of our revenue is generated through enrollment and tuition. So that is a very significant part of our enterprise, and the more predictability we can get into that process, the better off we all are. We've also done a cost of programs model to look at how similar programs that we offer are costed out on a nationwide basis to make sure that we're not out of line with anybody else and see where we can learn some lessons. And most importantly, all this rolls up then to we have an active group on campus now looking at a 5-year financial plan for the institution. This is the first time that we've ever been able to even approach this kind of question. What could the institution be looking forward to over the next 5 years if we can build enough predictability into enrollments and revenue generation? That will also help us mitigate any future cost increases. As far as this particular tuition increase, tuition and fees, about a 2.6% increase, which also is relatively low historically and within the state. About half of that, a little over half of that, is going directly to meet the required 2.5% general salary increase that was required of us. So that's where most of that's going. I will point out, maybe in a little bit of humor, we've shown significant efficiency in baseball victories this year. Just for quick comparison, if you want to monetize this, it cost us $5,700 for every one of our 53 wins in baseball, whereas the University of Texas spent $75,000 for every win on their schedule. So if we could learn some lessons from baseball, maybe we'd be better off.
You should make the baseball team bigger.
Yeah, that's right. It pays for itself, doesn't it? To the question, Mr. Chairman, about additional revenue that could be generated, certainly public-private partnerships are areas that I think are ripe for exploration. I know that's an area that the state has been sometimes reluctant to get too heavily into, but it's certainly one that I think all of us would like to explore more. And certainly we're all excited about the ability to self-manage more of our own capital projects. We still believe there's a significant amount of savings that can be gained through more efficient management of capital projects. So,
thank you so much.
Yep.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Coben.
President Lowe, can you tell us what some of the advantages are to grow your enrollment?
Sure. There's a couple lessons that we learned from Tennessee Promise for us, and I should have said this to begin with. Something that you've seen, there's a lot of commonality among all of our institutions, but there's also some significant differences, and so every institution is approaching some of these things a little bit differently. And certainly in our geographic location, we have our own unique set of circumstances to deal with. Tennessee Promise being one of those. We lost about 15% of our freshman class due to Tennessee Promise. Although we've seen our freshman class size grow incrementally since that time, and this fall we should be over 1,900 freshmen again this year, be the largest freshman class since before Tennessee Promise. But to grow, it's a multifaceted answer to your question. I wish it was a simple answer, but one is we have to be more deliberate about growing enrollment. We have to have a much stronger ground game in terms of boots on the ground. Recruiting students is very much a personal enterprise. It's a face-to-face endeavor, and so you have to invest in that, and we've had to invest in that. And so some of our resources in the last couple of years have gone to restructure our recruiting efforts because as all of us up here can tell you, it's a very competitive environment, and not just among all of us, but across the entire nation. And so, structuring our pricing effectively is very important at all levels, as well as the discounts or the scholarships. Have to be packaged in appropriate ways. But all that has to be in alignment with your institutional mission and priorities, obviously. And so, yeah, that's what we're in the process of doing. I think we've made great progress, but we've still got a lot of work to do.
Has your transfer rate increased since Tennessee Promise?
Our transfers were up. Actually, our transfer numbers were up the first year of Tennessee Promise quicker than I expected them to be. The first 2 years of Tennessee Promise, our transfers were year to year about 10% above each preceding year. This year, actually, right now, we're tracking a little bit down from last year in terms of transfers. So the Tennessee Promise has done a lot of wonderful things in this state. And I'm a big supporter of it. However, it has also made a lot of the traditional ways of looking at enrollment and predictability very difficult. Because the nature of the way students select an institution and the timing at which they select an institution is all changed. And so there's still some adjustments going on. I think some of that's beginning to get renormalized to a new center of balance, but we're still seeing that play out. Yeah.
Other questions? Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman Coe.
Still off.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you. Good afternoon. Okay, there we go. Good afternoon, Chairman Coe, Commissioners, Director Krause, for the opportunity to visit with you this afternoon and to speak about our budgeting process and how we arrive at a decision to increase or not tuition and fees at the University of Memphis. My name is Raj Kurapati, and it's my privilege this afternoon to represent Dr. Rudd and the University of Memphis in this very important discussion. I'll start by saying I just came from Texas A&M University, where I had to argue for a 3.7% tuition and fee increase. And I suspect today's conversation is going to be easier in that regard, as University of Memphis is not looking at increasing tuition and fees for this upcoming academic year. Also, I recognize that I'm between you and lunch, so I'll make my remarks very brief and try to focus on the questions that were raised and our process. Majority of the issues were already addressed in our written testimony written responses to the questions. So I'll talk a little bit more about some of the processes specifically that we employ in coming at a decision. Additionally, I do want to talk a little bit about our students as well. So I'll start with speaking to our students. The University of Memphis student is unique in that, a majority of them come from very challenging socioeconomic backgrounds. So that's a primary consideration when we look at any resource allocation or tuition increase or any sort of budget decisions that we make at the university. Very quickly, 55% of our students are first-time freshman undergraduates that are all Pell eligible. 50% of all of our students are Pell eligible. 86% of all of our undergraduate students receive some form of aid. 96% of our undergraduate freshman students receive some form of aid. 30% of our students are non-traditional, i.e. they work and go to school. 35% of our students are first-generation college students. And 56% of our graduates actually stay and work within in Memphis or the immediate area. So our university plays a very pivotal role in the success of our city and our immediate neighbors and the state of Tennessee. So I think all of that speaks to the need for us to be very diligent about how we go about managing our resource and especially when we're considering increases in tuition and fees. All that to say, we serve a primarily urban population that come from very challenging socioeconomic backgrounds, and many of whom are not the traditional students. Let me talk a little bit about our budget process. Our budget process employs what we call a strategic resource allocation model. Effectively, what that does is tries to bucket our expenses by department and see where exactly our enrollment trends are, which programs are growing, which colleges are growing, which ones are not, and whether or not our resources, our budget is being properly allocated to ensure that we support the growth and rethink reallocating some of those resources to areas where there's a drop in growth. And that's been very important in helping inform our strategic allocation of resources, which, again, are always limited. Our fiscal planning and budget process, as Stephen alluded to earlier, usually kicks into full gear after we have a measure of where the state budget is heading, and then how we can balance what we can anticipate from the state budget with other revenues and strategies to ensure that we operate on a balanced budget. We go through a rather extensive process. We spoke to that a little bit in our responses, so I won't waste my time doing that. But we consider many things, including inflationary costs, the need for us to bridge any gap in cost increases versus any revenue decreases and/or gaps. Then we think about strategies on how we can bridge that gap. This time around, we made a conscious decision not to increase tuition and fees. And that did not come at very lightly. The fact of the matter is, when we all suffered from a drop in state support as a result of an economic downturn, we've increased our tuition rate significantly. We were in the double-digit increases a few years back. We've since moved away from that, and we managed that, and we're back up to about a 60% 35% tuition fee distribution in our budget, and we want to try to maintain that to the extent that we can. We need to recognize the fact that state support is provided to drive down overall tuition and fees costs, and that's why we're very conscientious about that. Our primary consideration in all these discussions, as Dr. Rudd would have said if he was here, is student retention and graduation. And how our budget decisions impact that. So some of the other considerations that are part of our calculus include, how does any cost increases impact our students, any tuition increases impact our students? How do we balance increased state support with revenue sources, which include tuition and fees, external donations, and competitive grants? I think you bring up very important questions because we need to look at the entire pie as opposed to just purely focusing on tuition and fees, state support, but also look at grants and other opportunities to grow our revenue base. We also look at opportunities for us to grow other revenue sources, specifically donations. We focus quite a bit of effort in that, and I think that's evident in the makeup of our budget. We've seen a steady increase in our external donations, primarily in the area of support for students. Earlier we saw a graph that showed that roughly 10% of the entire system budget is allocated towards student support in the form of scholarships. In the case of the University of Memphis, it's 19%. And a good chunk of that growth has come from external donations from good partners such as FedEx. What are we doing to cut costs? We are focused in trying to bridge the gap that we know is going to exist as a result of continued cost increases by looking at the way we do business. We were trying to do our business more efficiently. We're trying to reduce administrative burden to the extent that we can. And to the question that was posed earlier about what can we do as a commission in helping manage that, I think anything we can do to help support mechanisms that allow us to be more efficient in the way we do business is going to be very important going forward. And we also consider how our tuition rates compare with our peers. One of the other areas where we can grow revenues is to increase the overall student population. And we want to make sure that we are competitive with our peers. I heard a statistic that we're a net exporter of students at Tennessee. We want to retain the best and the brightest. And one way to do that is keep our costs low and try to recruit students. And is that a bad statistic?
We're conferring via psychic communication. I would say we have not been a net exporter in recent years. We are retaining the vast majority of our students. Certainly there's a student able to select from a more selective institution that maybe leaves, but generally
Yeah.
students remain in state.
So that's our statistics wrong. I take that back, but I
Or
think
it could be
yeah.
exacerbated in a
Yeah.
border area like
Yes.
Shelby County.
I
which I'm
think
sure is
in
the
our
most-
area, I think that's more focused in our
I
area.
bet that's right.
So I think there's opportunity for us to retain some of more of our students and grow our base, and that'll help keep our costs low as well. And if there's opportunity for us to bring some of the best and brightest from the other areas within our radius, would also help with that equation. So I'd like to stop there and effectively. Again, state that our goal here is to keep costs low for our students, specifically the University of Memphis student, because the makeup of our students is such that, that's a big factor. Cost is a very big factor in their success and their march towards to a degree. So thank you very much, and I'll entertain any questions if you're.
Thank you very much. Questions? Okay, thanks very much. Appreciate all the presentations. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Those were excellent. Okay, the very last item, Mullins, I'm so sorry. The very last item on our agenda is the election of officers for the next year. And at this point, I will open the floor to nominations.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to nominate you, Mr. Evan Cope, to continue as our chairman in the next year.
All right, very good. I'll pass the gavel then to Commissioner Coben, who will conduct this portion of the meeting.
If I don't have any objection, I'd like to propose that we consider the officer elections as a slate with a single vote at the end of the nominations. So if that's acceptable, I would seek a motion and a second from the committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We'll now seek nominations for the vice chair from the East Grand Division.
Ms. Coben, it would, sorry. Ms. Coben, it is my honor to nominate Mintha Roach for this position.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We now seek nominations for the vice chair from the West Grand Division.
Commissioner Coben, it would be my honor to nominate Vernon Stafford as vice chair for the West Tennessee Division.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. And finally, we seek a nomination for the secretary, and I would like to nominate Mayor A.C. Wharton. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Seeing that these nominations have been completed, I would seek a voice vote. All in favor say aye, and any opposed, if the motion passes, then these will be our chairman and vice chairman and secretary for the next year. Would you like to do the voice? Okay. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, unless there's any further business to come before the commission, we will adjourn.
115 House hearing room.
Yeah, okay, we're, just for information purposes, we will reconvene in the House hearing room at 1:15 for the joint meeting with the Board of Education. So there being no further business, any comments from fellow commissioners here before we adjourn?
Lunch on the 8th floor.
Lunch on the 8th floor. Thanks so much. Meeting adjourned.
Congratulations, Mr.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.